Welcome to the SMITE Minor League here in Europe, Finch and Taco for week 2, and we have a loaded day full of SML action. We already saw last week, right, in Signum dropped a game. I mean, it is really up in the air in Europe right now.
Just about anything goes, and that's part of the fun that gets introduced with these best-of-1 series. You've got 4 separate sets to try and take care of today, and these teams, they're all looking to work their way up in the standings.
And that's right. You mentioned it because it's that best-of-1. You got to make sure you're on your toes. We've seen some interesting starts, some different compositions than normal. It's kind of opened up the meta even more, and you got to make sure that you're executing on everything on that first time. You might not get a second chance, but all these teams are trying to get their chance towards HRX. Fortunately for you, it's much, much easier. You only have to go to highresexpo.com to grab your tickets November 16th through the 18th. SMITE World Championship, Console, Paladins, it's all going to be there, Taco.
And don't forget, guys, you're going to want to make sure you keep an extra eye out there for those after-party tickets.
Good
They're
point.
not currently on sale, but they will be released again eventually, and so you want to make sure that you get your chance for the stuff after the stuff from DreamHack.
That's right. I mean, I went to HRX last time, and I loved it. You're going to want to make sure you're there. Everyone's having such a good time. It's bigger than ever this year with DreamHack, but that's something that you can look forward to in November. We have something you can look forward here now with the gym sale. You'll be able to save a little bit more when you pick those up. 35% off the gym packs for a limited time, so you can go in there and get your cool new Tier 5 Bologna skin if you want to grab that one. Chibalanka has a really cool skin out there as well that I'm liking. again, there's a lot of good ones to pick up.
A lot of different ones too. You can't even forget about the Royal Bundle that came out not too long ago.
Yeah.
For some of you that might be a little bit late to the party, you can always cat yourselves right up.
Be a full degenerate and get in that classic joust, right? Yeah, and get that wheelish skin. I think that's in that bundle as well. So you're definitely right, Taco. There's a lot of good stuff to pick up, but those are just some of the cool things you can enjoy outside of the competitive scene. Today here in the minor league, we got a fully stacked schedule of games that we're going to be able to bring towards you. So I definitely want to make sure that we go over those in a little bit more detail. The first one, of course, is Optimus Gang versus Milky Way. This one is I think a bit of a rename. This was Victoria's Secret formerly before, and they've been struggling, and Optimus Gang have looked great. So that one might end up being towards Optimus Gang, but they certainly have a chance to upset them.
Yeah, Milky Way, or Victoria's Secret,
right,
as they used to be formerly known as. I think that there is going to be a lot of focus towards early game pressure still. That seems to be the direction that the EU minor league has sort of stepped into.
Yes.
I am curious to see if anybody chooses to try and branch outside of that, but I really want to keep an eye out for Sacred Speed Buff here with that back-to-back doubleheader.
That's a good point. They've got 2 games towards the bottom end. They only played 1 last week, so this is a chance for them to try and grab 2 wins potentially and sort of skyrocket themselves up towards the top of those standings, where you can see Optimus Gang really kind of standing alone, 2-0. Poppies are right behind them, and again, sort of the big story is Insignum did have that one falter up against Optimus Gang with that 1-1, but with how strong they're looking, I don't really think you can hold that against them.
Optimus Gang, I mean, they have a chance right now today to just further that lead. You don't want to give the Poppies any real opportunities to try and catch up to you. The Poppies also still yet to have that back-to-back set or concern that some of the other teams have to worry about today, like Sacred Speed Buff. I do think that there's going to be a fair amount of pressure all across the board.
Well, we talked a bit about the Optimus Gang Milky Way matchup already. The one right after that, Insignum up against Exordium, that's another one that I'm really interested in, Taco. And I've been watching Lasbra a lot. I mean, even in the game they lost up against Optimus Gang, he looked great. Of course, when they win, he feels so much like that engine that sort of drives them forward. What do you think is he who you're looking at in that setup against Exordium, or is there anyone else that you're sort of got your eye on?
I do feel as though Lasbra is certainly a member that's going to have to be a little bit more of that coach leader player nowadays. I think that we're starting to approach a time period where these players are familiar enough with each other that it's time to start separating and taking your game to the next level, essentially. And I think that a great way to start there is just for Insignum. They're the ones with, I think, most of the past experience. They're the ones who have actually flown out to LAN, and not only that, but they won during the summer split. So I think week 1 kind of just caught them a little bit by surprise. Maybe not expecting things to be as aggressive early on as they were, but I think after you get a little bit of a taste for it, we'll start to see the different approaches from Insignum.
Well, Optimus Gang up against Milky Way, that's going to be the first set that we take a look at here today, and picks and bans appear to be ready to get underway already, so we'll get right into the action. And so far, we've seen a high premium placed on about 5 picks in particular, right, Taka? The Freya, the Najas, the Barons, the Athenas have been in there as well, Chernobog. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing those ones be the one that are valued here in the SML as well.
Surprisingly enough, Ratatoskr actually one of the first to be taken off the table immediately.
Yeah.
But
and Robin, wow.
I'm not in disagreement, though. This is just very clear game-specific banaways. They know that Milky Way, his jungler, prefers having the Ratatoskr and the Robin. I think that Mystic Rush and Through the Cosmos are both excellent diving utilities, and without those, things could be a little bit more complicated for Milky Way to find a way to actually punish Optimus Gang's backline.
And that does mean they'll be able to grab the premium jungler right now, right? While also taking those sort of next 2 on the ladder away from them. So Naja going to be the first pick there for Optimus Gang. And then Milky Way, they're going to be grabbing the Agni and the Rom on the back end. That means Athena Freya could certainly go right over to Optimus Gang, and Milky maybe not valuing those as highly as some of the other teams right now.
No, instead they're going to prioritize their mid and jungle already. This is a fairly early on period to have an established mid laner, but I like that because it kind of forces Optimus Gang to also take their mid laner within the first 3 selection. Otherwise, they might end up losing some of the more ideal gods towards that 3rd and 4th pick ban period, and it seems like Optimus Gang just want to go ahead and establish their entirety of their damage.
That's going to be the idea here. The Jingwei, Giannis, and Naja is all of essentially their carries at this point. And I know, Taco, you've personally been a big proponent of Jingwei, and I'm kind of right there with you. She's insanely safe with the airstrike, with her ability to get out of knockups so easily, and she can back and come right back in. It really does feel like she's one of the stronger hunters right now.
Jingwei, there's a lot of abusable tools that I think her kit provides for, and her passive is is definitely one of them, and having the ability to essentially outfarm the other hunter could be really important here, especially since Jingwei also won't have to worry about that Sobek selection out of Milky Way. But
that's right.
I'm not fully convinced that this is going to be in the support role. I think that there's still some chances that this Sobek ends up in the solo lane, and if so, I do like the beginning of the peel there for Milky Way. I think they still need a couple more frontline components. They can choose to go for possibly a Cerberus, I think, could even complement their draft pretty nicely here, but also maybe wanting to look to prioritize that jungle pickup pretty soon.
Yeah, and they clearly are thinking about it at least, right? They're banning away the Thanatos and the Ao Kuang, even with the Naja already on the board, so perhaps not being entirely sold about where that's going. I mean, there's been some Naja in the support role, right? So you got to make sure you're still staying flexible there. But I'm with you. I think we might be seeing Sobek in solo. I don't know if we like his matchup into the Jingwei. And a Wheelish, perfect pairing to go along with that Sobek as well.
I really like this Wheelish pickup. Not only that, but Jingwei, I mean, notorious for wanting to use the Persistent Gust to get a little bit more range off of that agility. And without, or knowing that there's an Wheelish on the map now, Jingwei's going to have to try and be a little bit more considerate about the usage of those ability cooldowns. Same for Bakasura also. I like that Milky Way are going in the clear direction of just wanting the easy wombo combo setups. I think you're definitely going to be able to provide that for in a Wheelish Gravity Surge setup off of any Sobek plucks, Sobek tail whips, and Optimus Gang also having 2 gods that can be punished.
That looks like something they'll be able to capitalize on. But which one do you feel like is more likely to go over into that solo lane? Because I got to imagine it's between the Naja and the Bakasura here. And I think there's a case to be made for both. We have seen Bakasura in solo a little bit more often, I feel like, though. So maybe that's where they're leaning here.
I would probably prefer to see the Naja in the solo lane and then the Bakasura to end up as the jungler. I think that Naja, while Naja is incredibly strong in the jungle, it might fare a bit better against the Sobek in comparison to the Baka.
Yeah, Bakasura might have some trouble there as Fafnir rounds it out. No Athena selected here in the draft or banned. A little bit curious, but not being valued. Fafnir, Kumbhakarna, Sobek, all certainly strong guardians. But before we head to the game, Taco, which way are you leaning when you got both these drafts here in front of you?
I actually really like what Optimus Gang have put together. I think that they have a very strong spread of damage all throughout, from early to late, whichever stage they might be in. I think that there's definitely ways that they can look to attack Milky Way.
I think so too. We'll certainly see once all of these picks, though, get into action. Let's get it over to the casters and into the game to get started here for Game 1.
Thanks a lot there, John Finch, and of course, Taco. Shout out to you as well. Optimus Gang and Milky Way on the start here. My name is Tom Pattinger, joined here by Ryan Agro Bailey. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well, Tom, and I'm excited to see why Sibi decided to take this Kumbhakarna into the solo lane and let Fusify pilot that Naja. For my money, I think it's because you see a Sobek in the lane, you know that you aren't going to have kill potential because it's Sobek, and that's what Sobek does. He stalemates lanes better than anybody else. And so you may as well bring something that will also have, I should say, similar or comparable CC and disruption once you get to the later game, and Kumbhakarna brings that. He also brings the same sort of bruiser damage that Sobek does. Now, it's a little bit riskier. Sobek is so safe with lurking in the waters, whereas Kumbhakarna, you can get in front of Epic Uppercut and kind of stop it in its tracks, but I think it's Sibi and Optimus Gang trying to match that late game teamfight prowess that Sobek will bring.
I've always kind of liked the solo Kumbhakarna realistically, but trading it off for the Naja or even the Bakasura, really. I mean, we've seen Baka once or twice in the solo lane, but with a much different mentality than these two Guardians here. These guys, probably Kumbha more so than Sobek, are going to be looking to fill that bruiser role. A little bit of damage, a lot of bit of control, right? The Baka's not going to bring any control, but just a ton of damage, so I think that's why we see Johnny kind of stick with him in the jungle. And then Fusify and the Naja, again, bruisery, but like you were saying, I think when you put Naja in that solo lane, you're kind of looking for kill potential, and so that not being there kind of dissuades everybody and winds up with this, on the surface, what looks like a very jank composition. But I think once the first 10 minutes or so are done, you're just going to see 5 characters on the map that are very familiar in what they're trying to execute.
Well, it's also that, yes, you're looking for kill potential a lot of time with Naja solo, but in this sort of matchup, you could have gone to solo, understood you're not going to get kill potential, but instead just try and use the pressure that you would gain and control buffs on the right-hand side, which is very easy to do with Bakasura in the jungle as well.
Right.
So you are giving up something, I think, by going to this Kumbhakarna in solo instead, where you're giving up that option. He's not going to be getting pressure, certainly not to the same level that a Naja would.
But at the same time, now you can leverage pressure on the left-hand side, theoretically, and look for the enemy red buff and the gold furies, which are the red buff, undoubtedly more important than the blue buff for sure.
Yes, it is, but there's also the possibility of constantly invading those XP camps, which are up so often on the right-hand side of the map, whereas the left-hand side has 2 buffs that are only up, every so often. Those have a much longer respawn timer. I think it still can work. I think Hispanify is going to have a much better laning phase with Fusify here, as they've already gained serious control of this lane, but they likely would have had it anyways with a Kumbhakarna just because Fafnir, Rom, yes, their first wave clear is really good, Rom's is, but outside of that, he's not going to bring that same level of overall push throughout the entire lane.
And so now with Sibi on the solo Kumbhakarna, the right side will be, I think, interesting in theory, but at the end of the day, folks that are uninitiated in solo Kumba, it's just another Guardian in the solo lane. He's going to clear fine. He's going to do his thing. The duo lane is really where I want to look. Fusify making a move right there. And even though he doesn't successfully get the invade off, he certainly lowers the health. Boss and E-Chrome are not very healthy. E-Chrome down to his last health potion as well, whereas Hispanify's got a pocket full of potions. So I'm looking at really the kill potential here on the left side of the map, in all honesty.
Johnny hits 5, and immediately Milky Way know they have to back up. This Bakasura-Awilish matchup is pretty interesting because both characters do pretty well against one another. Baka has a jump that he really relies on, and once you get crippled like this, Johnny can kind of just munch you up.
Yeah, but Remag able to find his way on out of there. Doesn't even have to use the beads, just kind of uses his own patience and understands. And I think that's one of the bigger moves when it comes down to playing Smite at a competitive level, is understanding just how safe you are. Use to blend games, using your life as total as a resource, in all honesty here.
Yeah.
He knows that, look, losing half my HP bar is better than losing my beads for a couple of minutes, and so understanding just how long he's going to be crippled. So nice character knowledge there coming out from Remag Doku on the Agni. I think a lot of players just panic beads, dash away, when he knows, look, this Baka has, what, boots? Not even. Yeah, he's got rank 1 katana. I ain't afraid at all. Ult me, baby, and just walks away.
And he shouldn't be afraid because they had just seen Ferrocrick's portal away from that red buff. A bit of a disconnect, I think, between Ferrocrick and Johnny on if they wanted to play aggressive at all during that engagement. And like I was saying, Awilish will have a tough time if Johnny's able to be the initiator, be the first one in, and really dictate the pace of the fight by using Regurgitate to cripple out Feather Step. It's really, really tough for Awilish to do her job whenever she can't use that movement ability. But at the same time, Johnny can't really safely jump away. A lot of times you'll see Bakasura start with Blink because he does have trouble getting in without committing that jump. But because of the threat of the Awilish, he needed to pick up Purification Beads. So already this pick by Marcus is slowing down this Bakasura even just a little bit.
Also, a lot of what Bakasura likes to do in the mid game, he just wins. But in the late game, what he likes to do, you want to blink in, jump out, like you said. Normally, their job is to isolate the hunter or the mid laner. You go in, you kill the person that you're supposed to, and then you jump out, run away. You usually have to back to base because everybody used their abilities on you, and then your team fights 4-on-4 or even 4.5-on-4, right? Here, now he's going to have to prioritize the jungle. It's a little bit problematic trouble as Remag gets hit by Ferrocrick, but a very disjointed team fight here. Not sure we're going to wind up with any bloodshed, and we won't. The mid lane Agni winds up getting back to base, nice and easy.
Close though, not an easy one for him. As Sibi uses Epic Uppercut, Fusify getting close,
Nice
but
job.
not needed. Sibi knew his damage and had it on lock. That Mage's Blessing Pen Boots Kumba did about half of Marcus's HP with that combo, and you were calling it earlier. It's bruisery, but really more damage a lot of times out of Kumbhakarna.
Yeah.
And that's why, man, Epic Uppercut hits really, really hard.
I mean, look at that right there. People kind of forget about the lurking damage because there's so much crowd control. But, I mean, at level 20, he's doing 650 plus 40% scaling. I mean, it's under that 50% threshold where I call high scaling, right? Once you get into 60, 70, I start calling you a high scaling character. 40 is relatively low, but you're really, really just hitting a lot of base damage.
Well, you get scaling off of the initial hit as well, so it's 55% scaling in total, and you're talking about over 700 base damage as well. So you are really hitting hard with that epic uppercut in the mid to late game. It'll almost half health Squishy if they don't have any sort of health built in their build. And just based off Farrakrick's first item and a half, I don't think he's going to be going for a lot of health, because the only way that he does is it's through effective health of Book of the Dead. By building Book of Thoth and picking up Book of the Dead, which no longer has health on it, but by the shield, kind of may as well every 70 seconds, every time that passive is up. But Farrakrick going for the more utility style build, and for what it's worth, I like this build a lot more on Giannis. I think that if you're building Giannis to do only damage, then you're kind of doing the pick a disservice.
Same.
Because lots of mages do damage. No one else can bring the same utility that Giannis does. It does mean that your build path is a little bit less appetizing, but it's also a little bit cheaper, and it brings a little bit more to your team.
Yeah, the Giannis is always a character. I mean, utility mage right in the front of my brain. He's got 1 damaging ability outside of the ultimate, right? Portal, yeah, I know it does damage. Don't at me. Trouble for the mid lane mage. Gets on out of there thanks to that ultimate. No problemo. Optimus Gang still the only team on the board, as Kumbhakarna got the kill earlier, taking down Marcus. So as we look at the potential of the Awilish, early game is where she hangs her hat, but I don't see no Awilish hat right now. Is this a missed opportunity, or can she step into her own in the next couple of minutes?
I think she still can. In your second and third item slots, Awilish is still going to nearly one-shot someone with Feather Step, and that's the time where you make your most money, right, is during that point in the game. So I think that Marcus is A-okay. I think this is another downtrend of this matchup, is that Bakasura is so good at out-farming you.
That was just silly. There's no reason for Doku to die there. Farrakrick kind of dinks 2 players with his unstable beforehand, and you shouldn't get hit by that, but if you do, it's, all right, I've learned my lesson. Doku sat there in the same spot. No, I don't know what to say about that.
Split focus. He was worried about the speed buff invade, and he's looking over there when that's quite a ways away. You got to stay focused on what can actually hurt you first, and honestly hurt you the hardest, and that's Farrakrick with an unstable vortex when you're in kill range like that. Definitely a big mistake there from Doku.
Yeah, just a mental mind slip. We'll see how Doku able to go ahead and respond, because I think that death was, like I said, that was a silly death that shouldn't have happened, and he knows that. He's a better player than that, so I don't really look at that one. And it's interesting that kill isn't going to open up any objectives. That kill doesn't necessarily do much outside of half a level difference here between our 2 mid laners, as Farrakrick does pick up the kill, but as inconsequential as a kill you can get. So I think it's important for Agni to just kind of forget it. You know, yeah, I oopsed, whatever team, shut up. I'm going to move on. You should too.
Now, we were already talking about the Giannis build path, but it looks like Doku's going for the same style, which is the Chronos Pendant. And as much as I like this idea on Giannis, I really dislike it on Agni, because you get so many abilities to use during a team fight as Agni, right? You can press your 4 3 different times.
Yeah.
You've got a stun on top of that. You've got your Flame Wave. You've got your dash. You don't really need CDR. If you're spacing your abilities properly, you can basically have something up all the time in order to affect the team fight. And instead, you should be trying to make all of those extra abilities actually do more for your team than just getting more of them. I've always been a little bit against CDR as a mage player, but especially on Agni, I don't think it makes sense.
Missed ultimate from Fusify. Not going to be big enough to earn his death, though. Marcus goes from 60 to 20% HP as Farrakrick lands. The ultimate still in the pocket. Not going to go for it just yet. Farrakrick finds it, though. There it is. Just fires and forgets. I mean, Marcus was out of the conversation. Farrakrick brings him right in just to hang up on him one more time.
There is a ward on top left, and I wonder by the red buff if that's where Marcus was trying to back or something like that, because I am usually the big detractor of, oh, that person got away with 5% HP. Let me Giannis snipe them and waste a really important team cooldown to just try and get a kill that, again, is kind of inconsequential. Optimus Gang maybe has a chance at this point to go for the Gold Fury, but that even seems a little bit risky with those respawn timers being so quick. But if you're going to land it, then at least you got something going for you, and it's not a total waste.
Nice shot there from Farrakrick, who then DCs. We're going to get him back in the game, no problem. But so far, Optimus Gang up 3 kills to none. And good job that they've been doing so far. Farrakrick playing very, very safe. The minute he sees danger, he's walking through the wall with the portal. And I think that interaction between him and the jungler, where Johnny's just kind of doing Johnny, I'm really liking how there is some mid-jungle synergy, but largely just trust-related.
And that's where Bakasura can get himself into trouble and be a little bit too aggressive at times. And Giannis is so good at bailing out characters like that and being there for when you need your teammates to pick you up when you're a little bit down.
Fire crit can be picked up here. Mid laner back in action. And per your Agni conversation, Rod of Tahuti's only 200 more gold than Chronos Pendant. And I'm with you. I don't like the Chronos. I would like to see this turn into a Rod of Tahuti since we're here already. How do you feel about Rod of Tahuti first item?
Not in love with it with Mage's Blessing.
Chronos.
He did go Chronos. I think that the rods start with characters like Zeus or maybe Discordia, where you go Boots 2 Lost Artifact, back finish Boots right away, and then build into a rod for the MP5 more than anything else.
Right.
I think that's okay. In competitive play, I would not build it in a casual game because it's just so all about your power spike that you get from that sort of build. But no, I think that the book build is so good right now. Going Book of Thoth, Boots, Spear of the Magus, Book of the Dead.
Even on a character like Agni who doesn't care about mana as much as others?
100%, because it's so much about your damage with that build. And also your utility, because you can build Soul Reaver in there, and that gives you not only a ton of power because Soul Reaver is a lot of power, but it also gives you power because of the Book of Thoth mana conversion passive. It gives you a Hell Shield based on Book of the Dead passive. And Agni is one of, if not the best characters at applying Soul Reaver right now in its current state because it also applies off its combustion passive. So this is just objectively incorrect as far as I'm concerned. You are, unless you are only there to be stun bot in the mid lane, that's the only time I think it's right now to go for CDR focused Agni. The book build is just too good.
Which right now, he's absolutely not the case to just be stun bot. Marcus is going to have trouble converting himself into damage in the late game. E-Chrome, one of the better characters at dealing damage from a distance, but still, it's Sixer over there on Sobek. He's not going to be really a long-range damage source. In the late game, Doku is the guy that Milky Way are going to look to provide that big chunk of AoE damage. I'm sure one item's not going to spell the demise for the Agni player, but like you said, certainly not as efficient as it could be. Johnny on the left-hand side saying hi to Boz, but not willing to full commit. Level 13 compared to the level 10 support, but knowing Ram's around the block, probably not the move he wants to make. Backs to base safety.
Johnny picks up an Executioner third item, and Bakasura really doesn't need penetration as much because he's got true damage from Butcher Blades, but I still like this pickup up against a Sobek solo, where you're actually going to have the opportunity to kill him now, should you head over to that right-hand side, and that's exactly where I'd be heading if I'm Johnny. Normally, the last thing you want to do is be ganking Sobek solo, but he doesn't have a lot of physical protection quite yet, only Silver Breastplate, and you've got the Executioner done already. I think this is a good opportunity to get a kill and get Sibby a little bit further ahead.
Executioner, yeah, I mean, the true damage Butcher Blades, that's how you're going to be starting a lot of your fights, but they're not always ended by the time the Butcher Blades is over. Nice beats from Farrakrick to avoid the stun, and he gets on out of there no problem. So, especially when you start talking about Shinsai, if players start building HP, which might be the case for Sixer. Johnny in trouble under the tower. Fusify going to be stunned out as well. Knock up, no pull. And the support Naja. Oh. I understand why he did what he did, but it does lead to his death. Fusify with what seemed to be a bonehead move, but aggro, break it down.
Armillary Sash gives you immunity frames. He was looking to get himself out of some danger, knowing that Marcus was on top of him to immune the damage from Feather Step or from the stun coming from Boss at that spot. He's dead no matter what because the positioning there from Optimus Gang is just not really worried. They don't seem concerned with what Milky Way is throwing at them, and it's getting a little bit noticeable, I'd say, where Farrakrick is invading back harpies by himself for no real reason. He's constantly putting himself in harm's way by trying to get poke damage off with Unstable Vortex, where a very well-coordinated team would definitely punish him for those sorts of things. Milky Way is not, and so Optimus Gang is inching further and further towards making these sorts of plays, and eventually Milky Way will punish them, but we'll have to wait and see if it's too little too late.
I mean, Optimus Gang routinely #2 in the league, right? So they're trying to find their usurpment of Insignium. Marcus chased to the end of the earth. Whoopee! Johnny comes out with another kill on his belt. And now Optimus Gang 5 players strong. Not willing to tussle with the Gold Fury just yet, but I would I would question that. I would like to see them just go for the gold. They have a couple of characters that can absolutely shred it. And if Milky Way does decide to show up, they can shred them. That will be the decision. Half HP already on the Gold Fury.
4 ults are down for Optimus Gang, though, and Milky Way is looking pretty solid in that department. Gold Fury leashed for a moment as Boss jumps up and over. Has that Draconic Corruption should he need it, and likely will. Deku just gone immediately after that epic uppercut.
Yeah, Farrah Crick combined with the solo, not something you want to tussle with. Hispanify does get out by the skin of his teeth on the right-hand side. Boz gets chunked. Optimus Gang were a little too spread out there, Ryan. I said go for the Gold Fury and the fight, and I maintain that was the right decision, but the execution just not there for Optimus Gang. Need to tighten things up a little bit and start looking in the same direction instead of different ones.
Sibby pulled back and killed by Marcus, put into that passive form. His Gold Fury is getting lower. Farrakrick forces a reset as Sibby does fall on these mid-harpies.
Uh-oh, Sixer knocked up. Milky Way pick up the Gold Fury again at half. Johnny with the loop around from the backside. Does not have the ultimate just yet. But everybody on Milky Way still relatively low, and that's a level 16 Bakasura, which means he's ready to take your whole team. Johnny gets stunned out. Hispanify, by the way, on the Gold Fury. Half HP on the objective. Agni's going to show up. Farrakrick playing goalie. Going to bring him down to about 60%. Marcus is here, but no ultimate in his hands.
No one's looking at gold quite yet. Farrakrick's low. OG get the Gold Fury. Farrakrick is able to escape through the portal, and Fusify takes one up to the sky. Marcus walks straight into the middle of the highway and gets flattened by the unstable vortex. Optimus Gang get 3 kills and the Gold Fury and a red buff here because Johnny could just eat minion that away. Indeed he does. That's a big swing in Optimus Gang's favor.
That first initiation, the first fight that we saw was really sloppy from Optimus Gang, and I think that's why Milky Way was able to really just take it away from them. And then Milky Way gave them another chance. They weren't able to clear the Gold Fury fast enough, and Optimus Gang said, the first fight was messed up, we were looking at different targets. This time we can accomplish what we need to. And they tighten everything up. They adjust in the moment, which was really important and fun to watch for what it's worth.
Really good ultimate by Farrakrick there. Not a lot of players will sit around and try and just steal Gold Fury, but all you need in that point is to either get some damage or scare Milky Way off the objective because you have people coming from base to help you out in that engagement. Well, he does both. He uses the ultimate, is able to force the reset, also because he hit both Boss and Echrome with that through space and time, was able to bring them down to low HP, and Echrome ended up falling pretty quickly after.
19 minutes in, Optimus Gang leading by 6,000 gold. The Gold Fury certainly helped, but they've kind of been in control since minute 1. Minion spawned and Optimus Gang were just on a tear. Slight small invades, larger team fights, everything going OGG's way. And the Bakasura is on his nonsense. Johnny brings Marcus down. He goes back in? Yeah. That's not the move. Johnny gets the kill.
I don't know about that one, Marcus. Another ultimate here from Fusify. Farrakrick should be able to follow up as this member hits the ground, though Sibby's going to send Boss right back up, and that actually saves Boss's life.
Yeah, Farrakrick was there ready, and Sibby does clean up his own mistake. He understands that the communication was a little haphazard. Hispanify with a late Aegis. Still gets hit by the Agni Bomb. And now Optimus Gang pushing on to tier 2.
Nice ring toss from Fusify off the knock-up there by Hispanify. Tier 2 seems pretty greedy from Optimus Gang. Pretty low health bars. Farrakrick has to back. No real reason to force it. Now, tier 2 left. Minion wave is already there. Echrome is a little bit out of position and low. Sixer will have to use the teleport to defend that. And good patience this time around from Optimus Gang.
And I love the way Optimus Gang is spreading the floor here. They force the teleport to the left side, which means Johnny can split push on the right and do that.
Yeah.
You
don't get to fight me. Like you don't have the proper permit to fight me when I'm level 20 and you are level 14 early game assassin.
And he's got the Chinsai, and he's got the Chinsai on top of the Executioner, which I really like this build because you're now not completely dependent on the Butcher Blades. The Butcher Blades will help you delete a player. But then that sort of awkward purgatory that Bakasura is in while he waits for his Butcher Blades to come back up, now he's got a valid way to fight tanks as well. And so I do like this mentality coming out from Johnny, especially when he's ahead.
I agree. I think it's perfect to go for the pen first because chin size, yes, it's very good, and it's a big power spike. And we see some players pick it up right after boots, and Haste and Katana are done, but you're lacking the pen, and, that passive is really important. You need the pen to make sure it's worthwhile. And even though the true damage makes it so you can still insta-delete squishies without Executioner, now Sixer is in trouble. Boss is in trouble.
And don't forget,
no one can really easily face tank this Baka.
And don't forget, Executioner and Shinsai aren't just dead items. They're also helping out Butcher Blades by increasing your attack speed.
Right.
Right? Because it's a duration, not a number of hits. So the more attacks you can squeeze into that duration, the better you're going to be looking. Boss, not looking too much better here. Firecrack and the Hunter combined to put number 11 up on the board. Johnny, on the other hand, 1v2. Here comes help from the support. The double kill for Johnny. 5-0-1 for the Bakasura player.
I'm not sure he needed a whole lot of help there. You're right, it was help with the sash from Fusify, but Johnny seemed to have that one under control, especially now that he has this Blood Forge to give him that shield of HP, really let him stick throughout these fights and be nearly impossible to peel. And if maybe Rom had some pipe dreams of being able to box him, you know, if we get to the hyper late game for any reason, maybe I could take him one-on-one. Once you add in this Blood Forge, lifesteal, and power, that's just not going to happen.
The Blood Forge is always an interesting choice. A scream sword, if you will, right? But Johnny here, you got a speed bump. This is the scary part of Bakasura. And every time Bakasura sort of comes to the limelight, I get very afraid of these games, Ryan, because it feels when you're on the other side, what do you do about that? Like, what can you do to handle the Bakasura?
By now, nothing.
Exactly.
It's over. You missed the train. There is no other train. You have to wait until tomorrow, or in this case, the next game, to handle this Bakasura. What you really need to do is make sure that your buffs are staying safe, that you aren't getting invaded a whole lot, and you have to really fight around where Bakasura is, because it would usually, by 30 minutes, Baka can no longer do what he wants, which is blink in, insta-kill your backline.
Look at this.
Yeah, he does his little flips, golden fire giant, and no contest whatsoever.
Imagine if he could eat the fire giant.
He'd probably get a tummy ache.
And then when he ults, he spits out little fire giants.
Ah, yes. This is the part that worries me about Bakasura. Here's a really insane Bakasura buff idea that I have.
And well, he spits out little fire giants, and then when he eats them back up, he gets little fire giant buff.
Oh. Oh. So you're telling me that he should build full CDR so that whenever he regurgitates, eat minion as up as often as possible.
Yeah.
In order to get as many mini fire giant buffs as possible.
Yeah.
So like a upgraded bracer.
Yeah.
And 40% CDR.
Yeah.
Okay. That would definitely be a different look for Bakasura. Yep.
I think it'd be the same look.
No, he'd probably look a little different. If we're going to do a change that big, we got to like change something, right?
Maybe make him wear a different hat.
Maybe give him a fork and knife so that he could eat the fire giant a little bit more easily.
You ever see those bear claws that people get?
Yeah.
You should use those. Sixer going to be clawed up here by the entirety of Optimus Gang. Johnny wasn't even here, by the way. Might be why Hispanify is lower than he might want. Sibby taking some damage. Off the mark from the Honest Ultimate. Fire Crit comes through. Going to shoot out is unstable. Also off the mark. Milky Way now 20,000 gold behind. Trying to play defense here in the middle lane. And
30,000 XP. 30,000 XP. I don't know if I've ever seen 29,000 experience lead. Ever.
I mean, there was a point where Johnny had a 6.5 level lead above Marcus.
I mean, almost everyone is level 20 on Optimus Gang, and no one is level 20 on Milky Way.
The closest is Sobek, who's 19.5.
That's absurd. That's absurd.
Agni tickling Optimus Gang. Look at that. No damage coming out from this Agni, even with the penetration on the boots and the Spear of the Magus. Optimus Gang grouping up one more time. Tower on Fusify. He is the tank. Trying to line things up. Agni bombs misses. Where's Johnny? He's in the back line. Just doing the damage. Fusify finds somebody to take out of the conversation. Firecrack could be dead, but a great shell saves him for the moment. Sixer cuts one down. But Marcus, Sixer, and Doku are toast.
Johnny is just doing whatever he wants on this backside. A triple kill for the Bakasura of Optimus Gang. And they take this one with absolute ease.
Yeah, I mean, this was the Johnny show, right? 8 kills, 0 deaths, a single assist. Everything just went Johnny's way, and because of it, Optimus Gang are going to take the first game of our Thursday minor league set.
Now, Fusify also had a really good game on that Naja. He ended up as support Naja 2nd overall in player damage because Ring Toss is a pretty insane ability. But
sure.
The early game was struggling landing those ultimates, didn't land one for the first 11 to 12 minutes, and then was on point every time after that, it felt like. So he had a really good turnaround. Ferroquick as well, and the Giannis was clearly too much to handle. But it feels like Milky Way has a couple things to learn still about positioning, how to play against this Bakasura, how to play as a unit against a team as strong as Optimus Gang.
Yeah, like you said, everybody really came through. Got to give a shout out to my one of my favorites, the Kumbhakarna solo.
Yeah.
I think it did its job.
It did.
Even when he died over there on the left side by the Gold Fury, he put himself in a position, and that's another thing that Kumba does well, is eat up your time.
Yeah.
Even if you get the kill, it's going to be tough because he's got the Mighty Yawn, and he's going to control you for a while, plus he's naturally tanky. Then he goes to his passive. You got to spend more time, which you can yawn during that as well. And then this team was just there. After they spent 20 seconds trying to kill the solo Kumbhakarna, they finally get there, and everything went nuts.
Everything Milky Way had was getting eaten. Their time by Kumbhakarna, their buffs by Johnny, their faces also by Johnny.
Yeah. The Serbian sensation just making it happen one more time. And what can you say? Bakasura just off to a tear. For the folks at home, again, we touched upon it earlier, but when you do have a Baka in your game, how do you sort of deal with it before he becomes Johnny on the spot?
Well, in that game in particular, if you're playing the Awilish, you have to do a pretty good job of playing around the ultimate. Like I said, that's tough for you to do as an Awilish, but as soon as you know Regurgitate is down, you have to play very aggressively. You have to be in that jungle. You have to be trying to force those fights, because without Regurgitate, Baka's at a massive disadvantage. He can't jump. He can't use one of his abilities in front of you unless he's going to have to use Purification Beads as well. So I think Marcus, I don't know that there were a whole lot of opportunities for him because his mid lane was so far behind throughout. You don't have pressure in the solo lane, so you can't go and gank there. Awilix is a character that wants to utilize the pressure that you have very well, and the draft didn't beget pressure, so where is he really supposed to go?
Tough stuff for the Milky Way, but Optimus Gang up, and away. One down in the books. We've got three more to go. We'll be right back with more minor league.
Welcome back to the SMITE Minor League. Finch and Taco here. Again, taking a look at some European action. Going to be looking at Insignum going against Exordium here in just a moment. But we already had a really exciting match just finish up, right? I mean, 26 minutes it felt like. Johnny was looking great for him in the jungle. So it's getting tighter and tighter here with Optimus Game looking that good.
Definitely a rather interesting set between those two. And I think that it might be a little bit of foreshadowing as to what takes place here in the rest of the SML. That Bakasura gameplay really just escalating it to the next level.
It really did show that pick can be very strong. Maybe you can run some Kumakarnas in the solo lane as well. You got a lot of options available to you apparently out here right now, but I don't know if we're going to be saying that same thing from these teams. I get the sense Insignum might be kind of all business. When they lost that game, they know they're better than 1-1 might indicate, and they want to come out and just swing, and Exordium, they got to answer that.
It might not be the easiest challenge, though, to meet up to, but keep in mind, Insignum did end up falling in one of their matches last week, so it's just about anything goes right now. I think it all kind of just depends on who's able to establish the early pressure and able to maintain it throughout the match.
That's going to be the start here. Athena getting banned by Exordium. Remember, we didn't see that one picked or banned at all last set, so Exordium and Insignum certainly giving it a little bit more value, which I think is probably the right call. Athena, pretty good. Taunts seem good so far.
Yeah, she might be pretty strong, and same could be said, however, for the Chernobog and the Reditosker. Insignum not wanting to have to worry about the semi-global or the full global out of the Chernobog, and I like this mindset. I think that it could lead Insignum to maybe picking up a Baron as one of their first choice selections. There's a lot of different gods, though, that I think could make some really strong pickups right now for Insignum.
Absolutely. There's a lot still open. You could definitely still grab the Freya here at this point. That's one I just still want to grab, but Agni is going to be the pick up for Insignum. And I like this. Agni is obviously a huge tool in a team fight for control. He can still do excellent damage like some of the best mages out there anyway. Maybe not better than some of the picks that were open, but certainly still strong.
And Sobek going to be locked away as well for Exordium there, and I like this Sobek pickup because it's so ambiguous as to where it's actually headed. You never know if it's going to be a Sobek support or a Sobek solo. I like either of those options realistically, and I think the Robin will also pair pretty nicely with this because you have a healthy amount of engage, I think, out of the Sobek. If you want that initiation factor, you've got the Robin also with some heavy dive capabilities, which I think could be really important up against the Agni.
Going to help them out a good bit. Serket and Sylvana is going to be paired right there with him, though, Taco. The Serket being able to do plenty of diving of her own to whatever of the carries is that Exordium going to grab. That Artemis could certainly end up being the target. Sylvana is going to be paired right with it, though, so Sylvanas does provide some early, really strong lane push, so they should be able to out-clear almost just guaranteed with the Sylvanas in lane, and they'll have some sustain in their fights as well.
I'm actually really concerned for this Artemis pickup that we're seeing, because if this is an Artemis Sobek dual lane, I like that classic combination between the pluck into the trap. I think that that's a great level of setup there, especially if your jungler is coming over for a gank. Robin can have no problems at all using that Mystic Rush to try and punish anybody caught up in that combination. But the Sylvanas and Serket, for as much dive potential as a Robin can introduce to a team composition, the same amount for Serket most certainly, and the Sylvanas just having that much early game pressure, the pools and the roots that Artemis is going to have to worry about. So positioning, I think, is going to be the real telling tale as to what happens to Exordium throughout this match.
And just how well Artemis can time that board as well is going to be kind of the key to make sure she's not getting punished. I'm right there with you. As Soul comes in, Exordium took the opportunity to ban away a couple hunters to try and limit Insignum, but Anhur still available, certainly still powerful in his own right, so they'll be happy with that one. And Exordium going with that Soul, I imagine likely for the middle lane, so instead of going with some of the other mages that were banned out, couldn't get to Sporty or Baron anymore, they went with this Soul.
The Soul is just a safe pick, I feel, and the Soul is also rather difficult for a Serket to deal with, having to worry about the Disapparate to avoid or just not even worry about the last breath being applied in the first place. So it's going to be really crucial here that Insignum pays just as much attention to the timing of those abilities from Exordium.
Amaterasu going to come out there towards the end along with the Terra for Exordium. So that is meaning we're probably are going to be seeing that Sobek over in the solo lane then, and Terra going to be our Guardian role, and then Amaterasu going to come through as well. So I imagine that'll be their solo laner. So a little bit of maybe not the ones that we always end up seeing here from these teams, but sounds like we're just about ready to go ahead and get into the game and see exactly how they're all going to end up working on the actual battlefield.
I think that having this Terra Artemis, they could encounter some struggles early on up against the Anhur Sylvanas, but so long as they don't play fully into the pressure between Genetics and Joshi, I think that Exordium can at least hold on to their own early buff control, which is the main thing I really want to keep an eye out for. In Signum, I think that they're expecting to be able to play more aggressive, maybe look to try and strip away the jungle from Exordium. So Exordium might need a little bit of assistance out of Angry Day and Alka if they don't want to end up losing that side of the map too heavily.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be following along with what Alka's plan here is. Popular using Terra to try and slow down the mini wave and give them some space where they can go defend their own purple. That is going to be the call. And I think the right one. Genetics and Josh are going to have no problem out clearing them, and that means they can defend their own purple and not really miss out on much farm too, and Joshi Genetics will come down and secure their own buffs.
Looks like Popular is choosing to just stay inside and hug that purple buff wall to get credit for the entire wave. Ken was able to just rotate around the backside of the purple buff and make it into the tower line where the creeps were already at. And now both sides going to be hitting level 2 shortly, just waiting to finish off those last couple of in-hands for the creeps. That's going to be 2 for Joshi and Genetics, and this is where we might start seeing a little bit more of the control aspect happen for Insignum's duo.
They already do have that push advantage. Might be trouble for Angry Day. Lasbra and Death Panner moving aggressively into the jungle, but Alka's right there for the wraparound. That does mean Ambush has to be used defensively by Lasbra. And indeed, he will be able to make it back out there, but they can't find the aggression they were looking for on Angry Day.
Lasbra also already revealed that he has the Deathbane and an Ambush. There's no Cobra's Kiss for Angry Day or Alka to have to worry about. As long as he is in level 3, he won't have that cooldown available to expend. So this should be a pretty free red buff secure for Exordium.
And to be fair, it looks as if Angry Day wasn't that worried about the control anyway, right? He went this Aegis route just more to make sure he'd be able to get away from the damage than the actual control from it. So even if Cobra's Kiss was up, that might have been a little bit more successful, but Aegis would have been the response. But again, nothing ends up happening there. Angry Day makes it on out, and everybody keeps farming up their own stuff, except for Lasbra. He's farming up the enemy's stuff.
And that actually is a great point that you just brought up right now, Finch, because Soul being able to go for the Aegis this early on not only complicates things for Lasbra, but also kind of reveals that Insignum, throughout their composition, they don't have a whole lot of hard crowd control. They're trying to rely pretty heavily, I think, around maybe the knockup from Genetics in that Wrath of Terra, or possibly even Lasbra's control from Cobra's Kiss and Last Breath, but still, things can be a little bit more tricky when your team is just looking for the burst execution, because if Insignum aren't on par with lining up all of their abilities at the correct time, then you're going to just wind up possibly having an entire situation turned against you, because Exordium do have the crowd control that they would need to try and turn the tables in their favor.
It definitely feels like Angry Day putting a lot of premium on his ability to time his disapparate correctly. You know, if he sort of senses the danger coming is already in disapparate, then the crowd control won't matter as much, because he'll move into that form where he can't be damaged anyway, be able to sort of wiggle free and have Aegis to extend it on the back end. So as long as he is timing those accurately, he shouldn't have any trouble. But I mean, Death Panner bombs over the wall, or like you said, like Lasbra, Last Breath, Cobra's Kiss, that could still certainly catch you off guard.
Speaking of which, I actually like what Lasbra chose to do right there, invading the backcourt piece from Alka, just trying to take away whatever little bit of farm he can. Death Panther already hitting level 5, same for Angry Day, but Death Panther, he's just looking to make it towards his own backcourt piece on red buff side to make sure that he can extend his lead however little bit. It eventually will amount up if he's continuously grabbing these back harpies whenever they're up.
Now, a lot of the times, Taco, when we see this Robin picked up and Alka is just now making it across that level 5 threshold, they like to try and get aggressive early. The Warriors benefit so much from trying to establish that early level lead. He's got great tools between the Root and the Mystic Rush to look for early ganks. I mean, who can be his efficient target here, though? Death Panner and Joshi can both get away relatively well.
I honestly want to see Alka spending a little bit more time over in duo. It's kind of difficult to try and prioritize ganks on solo. I think Zero is just a little bit too much survivability on this Amaterasu throughout the laning phase. So
maybe
duo
the Sylvanas,
is probably the most punishable option there. Yeah, Genetics won't really have excellent escape tools to try and utilize, and I think Joshi, even to a certain degree, could encounter some problems on that Honor. Without that leap available, you're just a sitting duck.
Essentially would be an Alka to capitalize as Lasbra continues his campaign to strip away the farm from Exordium on the Chaos side of the map, and he's been able to be over there for these last couple of spawns for it. And Lasbra is enjoying some experience from that, but it's actually Alka who has the Warrior tab I finished already, was able to find a time in there to back and come back out with that small power spike, but Lasbra should be matching that right now as he just backed.
Lasbra managed to get in a little bit of a sooner back in comparison to Alka to pick up the T2 boots, which did have him in the advantage for a little while, but now both junglers back in the same area as each other in terms of itemization. Right now, though, it seems as though this is a relatively passive laning phase for both sides.
It has been
haven't
calm.
seen as much aggression out of Genetics and Joshi as what I was expecting, I think, against the Terra and the Artemis, but large part of that's also just because of the fact that Popular and Kin6 have been playing incredibly far back and respecting the level of pressure they know Genetics and Joshi have.
Man, every day I get more and more proof that aggression's just a dumb name. Because it's like a word we use so commonly, you know? And then now it's like, oh, do you mean that washed up mid laner? Do you mean like aggression here in lane? It's like,
Finch, I'll be honest, I don't feel comfortable engaging in this discussion because I feel like you're gonna go missing, man.
That's possible. Get taken down by pure gaming excellence. Wouldn't want that to happen, right?
He hasn't missed a skill shot since 2015.
That's
so
true.
Keep that in mind as well.
Wouldn't want to try and beat him out here on the battleground. It looks like Lasbra and Zero one more time in the jungle of Exordium, but this time there's not really anything up for them to grab, but they're pinging it. They definitely want to be there repeatedly. Kha'Zix has a bit of an experience advantage over Zero. He might have to start rotating over here a little bit as well to make sure this doesn't keep happening. It's on cooldown.
Alka is just not able to defend his own back RPs.
Not at all.
At least it's not the speed buff. The speed buff did just pop up at the exact same moment Lasbra chose to strip away those harpies, but Lasbra not wanting to go that deep just yet. He's got the ambush to safely get over the wall in case the Deathbane doesn't work out to secure those harpies, but you never know when Alka might decide to give chase one day. And
that's part of why, I mean, you talked about how fortunate it wasn't the speed buff. I mean, we made that adjustment, right? The speed buff is further back here for all of Season 5. Of course, that was made way back at the start of the year, but so that you have to make a heavier commitment on it, and so that Alka doesn't get too far behind. Yes, you want to be able to grab that farm, but it's not certainly game over. As we have a bit of a 2v2 meeting here. Blue buff has been grabbed on the side of Insignia, but Mystic Rush could cause problems for Zero. Good dash to create some space, and Exordium find nothing.
Alka just has to connect with those abilities, and not only off on the Mystic Rush, but the Prana ends as well. You can't afford to miss both of your primary cooldowns for burst damage, and you want to end up finding the first blood. So a little bit of a squandered opportunity there for Exordium, but all hope isn't lost just yet. Genetics and Death Panther are going to make quick work of those right mid harpies. However, Joshi's starting to feel a little bit frisky on his own here. Going to challenge Popular and Angry Day, knowing Lasbra's wrapping around the backside.
Cobra's Kiss is through, immediately following up with the Desert Fury as well, but it's Lasbra who takes a ton of poke. Popular takes some damage on the back end, but red buff secured by Exordium and Instinctum don't really have any kill potential. They just get right on out of there, and one more time a fight sort of flashes up and then fizzles away.
Lasbra not expecting the level of burst damage, I think. It's what he actually received. Nearly ended up falling there, but Angry Day tossed out the Supernova, got a little bit of the knock-up ticks onto Lasbra, but they didn't occur when that ambush was being channeled. Speaking of which, Death Panther going to dash forward aggressively now, taking a lot of poke here out of Angry Day, and Alka's going to be able to find the first blood in the mid lane.
That's going to help out a ton for this Robin in the jungle, but can they answer back on Popular? Last Breath should absolutely confirm it. Double kill now for Alka, though, as he catches Lasbra on the back end. 2-for-1 in Exordium's favor, and they want to make it 3-for-1 with Zero. Kha'Zix coming up from the water and finding another.
Perfect rotation out of the Sobek solo. Recognize that Zero wasn't sticking around in lane, so why should I? I love the backup that the Sobek was able to provide, not only helping to take down a 3-for-1 exchange, but it's just beneficial knowing that Kha'Zix can have the capability to rotate and recognizes if Zero's missing for too long, I'm the one with the pressure over here. He's actually had a decent lead over Zero, so the Sobek faring just a little bit better than the Amma.
Yeah, and that first big team fight of the game favoring Exordium by a pretty big margin. They're up nearly 2,000 gold as a result of it, and Kha'Zix even going to get decent pressure now onto the Tier 1 tower here in solo. Zero is rotating over to try and defend this, but gotta make sure he's doing whatever work he does quick.
Might be too little too late. Fortunately enough, Kha'Zix will end up taking the aggro from the tower, but he's still trying to commit here. This is a pretty steep investment in terms of health, but knowing he's got that pluck right away. Going to be able to get on out of there, no problem whatsoever. No rotation out of Lasbra to have to be concerned about. And Kha'Zix kind of just abusing the advantage he knew he had.
Yeah, a big early tower there for Kha'Zix with the Sobek matchup. And we don't always see Sobex, I feel like, have a ton of pressure, but Amaterasu can struggle a little bit in her early levels. And it looks like Kha'Zix, who, by the way, played excellently last week as well, had no problems capitalizing on it here again.
Will end up losing his speed buff, however, to 0. Nice invade recognition there out of the Amaterasu. Knew that Kha'Zix took way too much poke from that T1 to confirm it. Speaking of poke, Death Banner trying to get a little bit going onto Angry Day, and that reminds me, Finch, I kind of wanted to address what happened in the mid lane there with Death Panther. That was such an out-of-place dash. It felt a little bit too forced in terms of Exordium or Xignum wanting to start an engagement. But not only that, Lasbra's ultimate as well, hovering so closely to that T1 tower line from Exordium, that's pretty much what spelled his own demise.
And they were able to very easily capitalize on it. You mentioned Alka's got to land those abilities. Well, he absolutely did in that fight in the mid lane that happened there with Death Panther and was able to finish that kill right on off. And here we are, a few minutes later, where Exordium able to enjoy themselves a lead. They've been able to put it a bit to work here in these builds so far. Alka going more with that Crusher as opposed to Lasbra, who's got the Jotuns and wants that cooldown up as much as possible. Alka will benefit from that passive, a little bit extra dot damage, and that attack speed doesn't hurt too much either when you're in there kind of throwing a few hands.
Speaking of which, not even sure that Joshi and Genetics recognized Alka being on duo looking for a gank, so much as it was both of them just being more interested in confirming their own jungle farm. Genetics has been a part of the only kill that's taken place there for Insignum, but approaching the 12-minute mark and onwards, Finch, this is around the time period we start to see some of those dances happen for the Gold Fury.
Right, that objective does now become much more viable for one team. It's a little bit easier to threaten taking it away quickly on the map, so the other team has to come in to make sure and try and defend it, so there's a chance for that. That might even favor Insignum a little bit because Joshi does appear to be out in front of Kin at least a little bit. His Devourer's Gauntlet is fully stacked, and Kin hasn't finished that one just yet. He even went back and got, I believe, the Light Blade, that tier 1, so has a little bit extra attack speed to speak of as well. So Joshi feeling comfortable here early.
It seems also that Alka is interested in prioritizing the Shifter Shield. We've been seeing a decent amount of this item lately on junglers. Between Void Shield and Shifters seem to be rising again in their popularity, and for good reason. I think that the stats from a Shifter Shield would definitely benefit Alka getting protections whenever he falls below a certain threshold, and I think also that Alka is trying to ensure whatever he decides to commit to, he's going to have more than enough power to do it.
Yeah, it's a great amount of power when you're over that health threshold before it switches over to that defensive power too. So I'm right there with you. Alka, if that's going to be the path he goes, should certainly be swinging. As a little bit of poke does get put the way of Joshi, and looks like that's enough for Exordium to start trying to pull this Gold Fury, and it's on Insignum to be the ones to come in response. Gold Fury now to about half HP and still backs coming out from Lasbra. Insignum have no idea this is happening, Taco.
They have zero idea this is happening.
Whoa.
Joshi not even bothering to glance over and check. It's the ward vision entirely in Exordium's favor, and Insignum just caught sleeping.
That's a bad sign for Insignum. Remember, they've been dominant here in the EU Minor League all season. Not just like for a split, but for spring and summer, even winning when they went to the LAN. And Optimus Gang showed maybe some places where you can, crack through the armor for Insignum. And even in Exordium, this is very early in the match, obviously. It's not over yet. But showing some mistakes that Insignum can't afford to make up against the better teams. You can't just not be checking Gold Furies.
Well, Death Panda decided to check the Pyromancer, and this time there was nobody there.
Yeah.
They checked the objective no one's on,
right.
And then forget about the one that everybody's at. So missing out just a little bit there. But Insignum, it's hard to tell at times what exactly the enemy duo lane is doing. I think that Joshi and Genetics, probably just an oversight that occurred on their end, because Joshi, keep in mind, he just took half of his health from getting chunked out by Alka, maybe still assuming that the Robin was in that duo side jungle, and that's why Insignum didn't choose to actually push up into the Gold Fury pit, just believing Alka and Angry Day might be waiting right around the corner to look for a moment to punish them, but then playing it safe ended up working against them also.
And that was one more thing I'm thinking too. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable going in and taking that fight as well. I mean, there is a bit of an experience lead going the way of Exordium through the solo in the mid lane. You can see it's coming out to be about 2,000 overall, being a bit normalized by Joshi and Ken's a relationship that's happening here right now. But for the most part, the solo through mid is favoring Exordium, and now there's some trouble for Angry Day.
But Angry Day, he's got that to separate. He'll end up losing both of his relics for it, but he's going to be able to heal no problem. Already back up to more than half health, despite having just been ganked by Lasbra on that Circuit. And this is the reason why we see the Soul being prioritized. You've got the Bancroft's talent for self-sustain, and not only that, it's just the immunity to the dot damage.
Okay, Zero's recognizing this time that it's happening, but just not getting here in time. But a plenty of chance Taco to punish on the back end. Genetics is the front line. Joshi jumping in aggressively too, but there's just no one around. Everyone has gotten away too fast. And Signum trying to find a way to capitalize on the back end, but one more time, Exordium forced the issue and get away with the objective.
A Death Banner gonna land an Agni Bomb onto Angry Day. All of Insignum grouped up in the mid lane, but it's just too little too late. Genetics gonna get pulled in, actually, by the likes of Kha'Zix. Beautiful blink pluck rotation on the back end, and Angry Day, he's still alive.
Just barely makes it out. Remember, he had no relics for that fight, as Genetics is the one who ends up dropping down early. Exordium still at 4 members strong. I like the idea from Lasbra, and Angry Day does stick around for the buff, but recognizes the rotation comes through. He makes it right on out, so avoids what could have been a very sticky situation in the jungle.
Alka might end up losing this back RP to Lasbra, but
again,
damage away. Actually, a blink forward out of Alka. Mr. Grush has been committed as well, forcing out the Lasbra from Lasbra, but he's getting rooted in place. No speed buffs involved. Zero hoping to buy some time for his jungler, and that shell is going to end up saving the life of Lasbra. I doubt that we'll be seeing much more investment from Lasbra on those back harpies after that commit call from Alka.
And now the Tier 1 tower goes down as well in mid lane. Exordium in these last few minutes has started to force these objectives. The Gold Fury, Pyromancer, and the Tier 1 tower have all gone their way. And you're right, now Alka is starting to flex a little bit in the jungle. When Lasbra's coming in, they're trying to strip away his farm. Anything to make Insignum sort of second guess a little bit here is helping them out. Exordium now have a near 5,000 gold lead, about 4,700.
And it's only expanding. That's the downside for Insignum here, is that Exordium, they seem to be becoming more confident with a lot of their calls and the way that they've been positioning themselves in comparison to Insignum, where they've just been forced to respond. The past several minutes, it's all Insignum on the back foot, just trying to retrace their steps and figure out an attacking point, and Exordium, not a whole lot of openings to work with.
I like this third item pickup from Popular here, the Shogun's Kasari coming through. They do have the Soul and the Artemis all ready for like those 2 attack speed characters for him. And then you got Popular kind of facilitating that. So maybe not a Fafnir, but can kind of do some of that same stuff, I guess, at least with the build.
Perhaps. And speaking of which, Genetics also going to choose to strip away a Sentry at that left mid Harpy choke point. Deathbender also rushing the Divine Ruin. That's a fairly early anti-heal item to pick up, and I think that he is just that concerned about the sustain out of Angry Day for good reason. That Bancroft's has more than definitely paid off.
Yeah, there's definitely some pieces in there for everyone, right? Like a little bit in there for Kha'Zix and Alka in their kits, Angry Day as well, the Terra to worry about with that Earth and Fury. So this is nice for Death Banner to grab it where you normally pick up your pin option anyway. Just make it the Divine Ruin. It might be a little bit less than maybe Magus, but not too much more, at least in terms of flat pin, so you're still feeling good. And they're going to have this box around the Gold Fury area. Alka will be the early target, but overhead kick remains a good ability.
Overhead kick to keep the immunity away. Zero going to get plucked back into everybody, forcing that Matarazu ultimate early on, but it won't be able to save his life. Blown up by the Supernova out of Angry Day.
A ton of damage taken by Zero, just not tanky enough not to be that far forward. Gold Fury now being looked at by Exordium. Lasbra on the back end. Joshi has to use beads to avoid the charge prey. Brainfire coming in from Death Panther, that's good damage, and Lasbra is indeed going to make Popular his target. Alka has to jump away as well, but now Genetics has been isolated in the front and he falls.
Everybody forgetting about that Tusky running rampant in Insignum's backline. With Joshi having forced to jump away, Exordium, they're just going to go ahead and finish off that Gold Fury they started to begin with. Lasbra had already expended all of his cooldowns to try and commit onto the Terra, and it just did not pan out well for Insignum in the end there. And not only do they lose Zero, they end up missing out on Genetics as well, plus the Gold Fury.
Absolutely. Taco, this is impressive from Exordium. I'm very much enjoying what we're seeing here from them. And this has not been Exordium, you know, picking cheese or invading early and getting a bunch of early leads. This has been them slowly making calls in positions where Insignum either can't or don't answer, and they've built up a genuine 7K gold lead for themselves here 20 minutes into the game. And they're kind of looking like they're a half step, if not a full step, out in front.
There just wasn't enough pressure applied to Duo early on, so Exordium's Terra and Artemis went pretty much unscathed throughout the vast majority of the laning phase, and without any real hard punish onto either of those gods. Earth and Fury and Tusky are only going to serve as positive reinforcements for Exordium throughout these team fights. I think that Insignum, keep in mind, they seem to have lost track of the Artemis throughout that fight,
yes,
being so focused on trying to maybe target out Angry Day or Alka, and for neither of those members to fall from Exordium and Insignum, they don't really have much of a choice other than to give up the Gold Fury there.
And it's really unfortunate because Lasbro comes in on the fight on the backside. It's really good timing, but Pop Wheeler's the target, and he's really not able to shred him quickly enough as one more objective goes the way of Exordium. This time it's the Pyromancer, but it wasn't enough for him to be able to grab that target, and Death Panter had just not quite enough damage with his Rain Fire, and Genetics ends up being the one that pays for it as he's kind of frontlining for the team with 0 dead. So at that point, Exordium really, I feel like, did a good job of sort of answering the 2 threats and then collapsing when they found a target up front.
Well, what surprises me, Finch, is that Insignum know the Gold Fury is down. They were there when that moment happened.
Yes.
But why are they not in position to try and prevent Exordium from then going and taking the Pyromancer immediately after? It just feels like there has been very little objective response from Insignum, and Exordium are just abusing this aspect of the match pretty heavily. They're wasting no time at all to just try and siege an objective, and it just feels like Insignum are never there to try and directly challenge it.
Yeah, and that's the recognition they have to have, because it's about to happen one more time now on the Fire Giant, and this time they've got to recognize Death Panter is right here. He and Genetics certainly going to be able to make the call. Fire Giant very low. Death Panter can't make it in. Exordium grab the Fire Giant with Supernova to confirm, and even further out in front now. And they've still got plenty of towers to burn down for even more gold.
Free sprint as well from Genetics, so Insignum aren't going to have that as an escape relic throughout the next team fight. Joshi will do the best with what he's been handed and make sure to strip away that T1 tower over there in duo. Maybe buy Insignum just a little bit of time here, because Exordium are going to have to worry about pushing those waves back out. Still 2 towers remain in duo lane as well. And mid and solo, only T2s left standing for Insignum, so Exordium probably going to spend the next few minutes focusing on taking down those structures, and then, if there's still time allotted, maybe look for a Phoenix push.
That'll be the idea here, at least from Exordium. I was a little surprised with how much presence they showed on that left-hand side in response to Joshi, but they just went and grabbed some more farm, went back, spent some of the gold they earned, and now they can group up and start pushing, and Insignum going to have to switch over to defense mode. But that is kind of a good sign, right? If they're in defense mode, they can't lose objectives because they weren't paying attention anymore. The fight's coming to them. Agni can be very strong at defense. I mean, I feel like Insignum can maybe put up a fight here around these Phoenixes.
The problem is that there is a significant experience and itemization disparity between these two teams. So even with Insignum being able to recognize that Exordium are going to come barreling down one of their lanes at any given moment, doesn't mean that they'll be able to respond by now. This could just be an instance of too little too late, and it might be one more time getting experience, because Angry Day and Kenshix looking for their openings into this Phoenix.
That's a nice pull from Genetics, though. That is going to bring Popular back in, but again, that's a Terra, and not too deterred by that by any means. That did look like a problem for a minute, but Insignum were just barely able to get into defense position in time and slow down Exordium and get the Mad Guy's Cloak off of Lasbro.
A great job there by the Terra to pull that Mad Guy's Cloak as well, because now Lasbro can't afford to play backline assassin any longer. He needs that moment of CC immunity that Mad Guy's Cloak can provide in order to effectively try and punish Angry Day or Kenshix. Without it, he'll have to sacrifice his purification beads to be a little bit more aggressive, and even then, probably still wouldn't be a super favorable situation for the Surcat.
Gotta make sure it's careful. In these defenses, it can be a little bit harder for some of these junglers to get a little bit lost in the team fight and find those same gank opportunities they had earlier on. As Exordium are going to back up to the Gold Fury, not come for that tier 2 tower and right just yet. They still have about a minute and a half on the Fire Giant buff, so they've got more time for it, but giving up on the Phoenix Each for now, they want to go back and spend their gold, finish off some of these builds, or at least some of these 5th items, because they still have blessings to sell as well. They have room for this lead to get even worse.
And expanding seems to be the only thing Exordium really have in mind. Insignum, Zero, and Joshi will make sure to push up that solo wave. There's only one T2 tower left on the map. Exordium made pretty quick work of those other 3 structures, and with only one in their way, it's only a matter of time before they end up sieging that. Their Fire Giant will be wearing off pretty shortly afterwards, however, and so I'd imagine Insignum may be looking to prep to defend, not even necessarily on the next Fire Giant, but just on their Phoenixes.
That's going to be the idea. I imagine Insignum probably won't want to go out there to that Fire Giant and come back to the Phoenixes, but they're going to have to be careful about these 2, you know, in-hand focused carries from Exordium. Ken is going with the crit route, has the Rage already, Poison Star working, and likely going to be able to sell that Hunter's Blessing to finish it off. Something along the lines of Deathbringer. Wind Demon wouldn't even be that bad either. And then Angry Day has even, looks like the Demonic Grip, so they've got plenty of attack speed and ability-based damage, but there's not a ton of response in terms of builds in that route from Insignum either.
I actually wanted to take a look over at the Artemis's build for a second here. We see a Rage pickup. That's something that we haven't seen in quite some time. I think that Ken 6 may be hoping to get a little bit more... I don't want to call it consistency, but no, actually, consistency is exactly what he's looking for with a Rage pickup. Yeah. That's all he wants, is very consistent crits throughout the team fights. And the Poison Star double down, I am actually a pretty big fan of this because you know you're going to get crits with Rage, pretty much. That's like a guarantee. Even without the Artemis's previous passive from the rework, it does not really make that much of a difference. He's going to be able to continuously apply that 15% damage reduction against Insignum and the 15% slow. So both excellent tools that Exordium can then look to further punish Insignum with in case they overextend a little bit too deeply. So maybe keeping an eye out here for this next Fire Giant, because Insignum are grouped up on this right-hand side. It does seem as though they might be a little bit interested in contesting.
Absolutely. I think that Insignum are at least showing some presence here, but very deep wards are down from Exordium, so they're going to recognize this is all happening. Fire Giant has respawned here on the map, and the Tier 2 tower in solo was grabbed by Exordium last time too, so it's just Phoenixes that Chaos side are worried about here now. As we cross over that 27-minute threshold, Insignum are not going to let this Fire Giant go down for free, despite the big disparity in gold.
A lot of the pressure is on Death Panner right now. He's probably the best line of defense here for Insignum on this Fire Giant, or the best capability for a steal. Angry Day's got that Supernova, but it's not as quick of burst as what an Agni Bomb can be.
It'll land just right there all at once. You can even throw multiple through. It'll be over a few seconds, but you're right. It's definitely hard to try and out-secure him. Lasbra is the word looking on the backside, has that Magai's cloak back and wants to get lost in the team fight. Kha'Zix find the pull onto Genetics, and he is immediately taking a bunch of damage, but he's been able to survive it thanks to Relics. Fire Giant still throwing in damage, but Death Panner needs some help on the backside. Alka can't find him.
The same could be said, though, for Lasbra. Went really deep there looking for Angry Day, but just still came up short. Angry Day with that Disapparate, it kind of just takes Lasbra for a spin.
Kha'Zix does manage to force the beats from Joshi, but Joshi with the Impale finds the kill in return. That is enough to give Insignum the 4v4 since Lasbra had to back, and Exordium cannot continue on this Fire Giant even though they're healthy.
Joshi, I believe, one of the only members to have not died just yet on Insignum.
Yep.
And in fact, it's that Executioner chin size build really starting to pay off for the Honor, not to mention Honor's passive alone already provides a little bit better penetration. So Kha'Zix going to have to be a bit more mindful if he wants to play as aggressively with those plucks.
And that's just great awareness from Joshi. The beads, the immediate pillar impale afterwards is what really punished that Sobek. And now has set up for Insignum to try and pull this Fire Giant for themselves. Alka getting zoned out by Lasbra. Angry Day is nowhere nearby, and Insignum now have grabbed the second Fire Giant of the game. And they've turned the momentum around entirely, even down a bunch of gold, even with Exordium being the one who won all the fights so far. Insignum came back out and made the defense.
Joshi just made a great play on that pick to Kha'Zix. That's the main reason why Exordium were forced to back off in the first place. But I am surprised that Exordium were so revealing in the way that they chose to back. Typically in a 4v5, you can still give enough presence to prevent the enemy team from trying to just siege the Fire Giant outright. But all of Exordium backs right in front of Insignum's faces as though they really believed Insignum wouldn't try to pull that Fire Giant.
I think that they didn't expect it, and Exordium get punished for it. They're now lurking in the jungle, looking for a chance to catch someone out of position. Lasbra and everyone is here, but I don't think they recognize it. Now they have to have an idea. They're grouping up on Fire Giant. Kha'Zix going to be the front line. Can't find a pluck. Remember, Joshi has no beads available. Desert Fury is a CC immunity that he'll use. Mystic Rush punches him into the ground, and Kha'Zix finds the first kill.
This is the fight that Exordium were hoping for on that Fire Giant. Kha'Zix, however, in a whole lot of danger. That is until Zero get blown up. A lot of control out of Kha'Zix here to help protect that Artemis, and Lasbra stuck just a little bit too far away from everybody else on his team. He's going to start actually running backwards towards Exordium's side of the map, just hoping to create some distance between himself and Exordium.
And that was great target recognition from Kha'Zix and Alka both. Yes, Joshi's big play was what defended the Fire Giant, but he had to expend the beads to do it, and they knew that if they can catch him out one more time, they could punish him for it this time around. Now with the 5v3, they're going to force down the Phoenix on the left-hand side and grab the first one of the game.
It's also really important where Exordium chose to stack themselves up, because they did it in Insignum's red buff. They're close enough that the next wave was more than enough time for them to take that Phoenix, because Zero and Joshi are respawning pretty shortly here, but they still have 30 seconds left. So Exordium, just great timing.
Another trap in the jungle that has been sprung. Genetics gets pulled in, but a 3-man Wrath of Terra brings Popular very low and sets up a kill for Lasbra and for Genetics. Now Lasbra puts the last breath on the Kha'Zix, takes him down as well. Death Panther finds it, but it is going to be a trade as Lasbra ends up falling. But this goes in favor of Insignum now. It's a 3-for-1, and they're the ones pushing down mid.
Rather interesting choice there. Maybe not expecting Genetics to be as tanky. I'm not sure what the game plan was from Kha'Zix. You have to see that one coming. Half of your team isn't even full health, so it's just surprising. Exordium has... It's like they play flawlessly and then just have random lapses of judgment.
Just really small lapses, and they end up having big impacts. Now 4 members here for Insignum, and Fire Giant is still on Death Panther and Genetics. They're trying to force down the mid-Phoenix. Alka and Angry Day are here to defend. That's enough to keep Insignum from trying to just take this game outright. And Taco, 32 minutes. It's been blow after blow traded from these two teams the last maybe 10 minutes of the game.
It was just such an unnecessary grouping. Exordium
it was
feeling
very
a little bit overconfident, I think, on that stack. They're like, well, this worked great the first time, so what's to stop it from being a repeat? And now they're going to end up losing the Phoenix, losing the Gold Fury. This is all just little tips and bits. That's not even a super mandatory Gold Fury to take. That's a Gold Fury you take because you want your Sylvanas to hit level 20 in Genetics. Now, with that golden hand, nearly finishing off that build, Insignum, despite having been, I think, on the back heel for the vast majority of this game, it doesn't make a difference now. Things are all but tied up.
And it's essentially 2 plays you can boil it down to. It's Joshi using the beads and getting away from the pull by Kha'Zix and the immediate return kill, and then it's Exordium sticking around too long in the jungle, trying to set up another trap to kill Genetics. Those 2 plays really have kind of erased 30 other excellent minutes of play from Exordium.
Got to be kicking themselves just a little bit for that one also, because the left side Phoenix from Insignum going to end up respawning just a little bit sooner than Exordium's mid Phoenix. That will probably be the window of opportunity for Insignum to work with in terms of pressuring the Fire Giant or even just trying to strong arm Exordium in the team fight, because Exordium are going to have to worry about protecting their mid Phoenix, unlike Insignum, who I think are going to be able to get their left side to respawn.
They do have that wave pushed out a good bit, so there's a chance they can be here for this defense. Fire Giant will be back up here in about 10 seconds, so that's where all the action's going to be, as Insignum have already showed their willingness to defend even when they're behind. Now that they're virtually even with just maybe like the last tier 3s to finish off of their items, they can certainly stand toe-to-toe with Exordium.
I do have to commend Insignum, however. They might have been a little bit slow to start here in this match, but they are capitalizing on every single opportunity Exordium are handing them. And this, to me, just speaks leaps and boundaries about the level of experience on these 2 teams, because I think most teams that were in the same situation as Insignum might not have been able to hold out nearly as well.
Lasper's keeping the waves pushed up in mid, but that whole while Fire Giant's been burned. Exordium grab it, but Kha'Zix pays a hefty price in terms of HP. Supernova does chunk 0 as well. Alka gets in a nice blow of his own, but it's not enough to finish the job. Genetics will be the next target, but Lasbra lurking on the backside could have a big impact, but finds nothing.
Cobra's Kid is going to be off the mark thanks to a nice pluck to the side there from Kha'Zix, and now Popular trying to provide with a little bit of sustain he can. Everyone from Insigno still looking to give chase.
Blink goes in on the Kha'Zix. Pillar is perfect again from Joshi, and that sets up Lasbra to find one more kill. Kha'Zix will be the casualty of war, but Exordium, they grab the Fire Giant. They have minions pushing towards this Phoenix, and it looks like they just barely are going to get here in time to defend.
Oh, possibly not. The Archer's just a little bit too strong there. Deathpanner and Lasbra not going to be able to make it in time, and Exordium just lucking out in a sense. Joshi had pushed up that duo wave, or the duo side, pretty heavily, but only to around the halfway mark. Didn't really want to go that much further by himself for good reason. And ADC that far up the lane without any vision on the map whatsoever, you're pretty much asking to get picked off. So Insignum kind of just getting beat by the fact that the minions had a will to make sure that Phoenix fell.
Minions OP, man, hard to beat, but that is going to make things nice here for Exordium. They'll have the Fire Giant on everyone but Kha'Zix. They should be in position to defend their own mid-Phoenix as it respawns here in just a few more seconds, and still have an avenue in to the base of Insignum through that duo side Phoenix. So a big win there for Exordium, only really costing them Kha'Zix. We were following along earlier with where Ken was going with his build. It was the Deathbringer to finish it out. So he truly is all in on this crit. But it looks like Rage isn't finished, so it doesn't have that full extra crit chance on there, but certainly will still be swinging really the entirety of Exordium arm.
And I like this decision making because Ken6 not in the same position as Joshi. I think Joshi has a little bit more to try and handle between Alka and Kha'Zix. I think that the Raven, thanks to the way he's prioritizes item choices, is tanky enough that Joshi was forced into this attack speed penetration build, so he can't afford to take up a 1v1 boxing match with Ken6, most likely going to end up being on the losing end of that to the crit.
Yeah, only would take a few shots, and with Zero kind of really being the only front line and not even leading that heavily into anti-attack speed, basically just the mid-guardian, it's a relatively easy path there for Ken6 to make this building decision. I like it as well. Exordium now pushing down the solo side of the map. They also have Kha'Zix and Popular coming through the jungle, make sure there's no shenanigans there. Right side Phoenix will be the call, and Insignum are here for the defense with relics available for everyone but Lasbra, still 18 seconds on beats.
And Deathpanner probably hoping to try and strip away that Mad Guy's cloak from Alga. Wants to remove that proc immediately. That way, in case there's a Mystic Rush into the backline, the Ankile won't end up silencing Deathpanner long enough for Alka to find the kill.
Kha'Zix is going to be tanking it for the first bit. Zero goes in for the dazzling offensive. Lasbra will be there from the left-hand side to follow up as well. Good pull from Genetics, but Popular responds with a dash of his own. So Exordium reposition, heal up a little bit from Fire Giant and from the Pillar, and are going to give it one more shot.
Lasbra is having a lot of complications, though, in terms of finding an opening to try and work into Exordium's backline. The way that this team is staying grouped up is rather impressive and important in terms of keeping their carries alive, and Lasbra recognizes it, no doubt in my mind. Speaking of which, left-hand fire creeps and Genetics getting pulled into the mix of everybody from Exordium.
Wrath of Tira does knock up one, but Angry Day has already punished him. Lasbra finds the soul in response. A little bit of help from Death Panther. Two-man stun creates some room there for Popular and the rest of Exordium. It's a 1-for-1, but Insignum defend the Phoenix one more time.
Losing Angry Day is a pretty heavy blow, though, in comparison to Genetics being dropped. Now Lasbra, however, forced to try and defend. So many fire minions pouring into this left side. Exordium, this is their opportunity to try and siege the right-hand Phoenix.
They are going to come back and try and force this fight one more time. Earth and Fury looks like have been expended, and that does give them a bit of a win. But Lasbra finds Alka on the backside of the fight. A good stun comes through and forces out the beads. Exordium going to have a difficult time making the retreat as Kha'Zix gets stunned as well. Able to get out of there with the charge. Prey and Insignum still want more.
Just so much chase potential, though, from Insignum, and this is the moment that they were waiting for. Exordium now just getting picked off one by one. Alka forced to expend the blink, already lost those purification beads not too long ago, And with that left-hand Phoenix due to respawn any moment, now Zero still looking to chase down this Artemis. If they find Ken 6,
so fast.
That's going to be incredibly problematic for Exordium.
This Amaterasu is so fast. Lasber's now here as well. Dazzling offensive for the stun. Lasber cleans up the easy pick. Now it's only Angry Day and all good to defend up against Insignium. Everyone here except for Genetics, they're about half HP, and Zero doesn't have much mana, but they very much have a chance to make this happen. Alka moves in first. Supernova is good to force out Aegis from Joshi. Lasber, though, drops the last breath. Alka at least wants to trade his life, but can't even find it. Death Banner gets the kill. Now it's 5 members up against only Angry Day.
Beautiful poke damage from Death Banner
Phoenix,
onto
though.
Angry Day. He's just sitting so incredibly low right now. Exordium, they don't have much longer to wait for Kha'Zix and Popular to respawn, but with the help of Genetics, this is going to be Insignium's chance. They're not wasting it. They're going straight for the Titan.
They're going to try and make the win happen right here, right now. Angry Day, the one that's on the defense. Wrath of Terra comes through for the knockup. Titan's down incredibly low. Popular finds the kill and the stun. That's a double. Genetics and Zero, the only one left. Triple kill now for the Terra as Kha'Zix finds one as well. Titan just barely standing. Can the lone Sylvanas do it? He finds it. Titan goes down, and Insignium grab the win. Wow.
Had Genetics not managed to finish that one off by himself, Exordium win that game, no doubt. They are able to just immediately counter Pursuit right down the mid lane. Beautifully executed at the end there from Insignium, completely punishing that re-aggression from Exordium onto the right-hand Phoenix. And that's kind of what it boiled down to for Exordium. It was a lot of really smart gameplay, and then those lapses of judgment that just ended up turning against them.
There were a couple key moments that stood out to me, and we highlighted them already during the match, right? The play that Joshi made in particular to keep them alive, and then Exordium overstaying in the jungle, and that's what sort of allowed Insignium back in. From then, it was essentially just a 50-50 kind of coin flip in those fights, and it was Insignium the ones that come out on top. But who is it that's going to be your MVP? It's hard not to want to vote for Genetics just for somehow inching them over the line right there at the end, right, and winning. I know that's just that one small play at the end, but you just want to cheer for it, you know.
Sometimes the support, that's what he's there for. He's just saving the day. I think that he definitely managed to find them the game win, and that's probably enough to get him the MVP vote there.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to give it over to Joshi too, though, because and for all intents and purposes, without that play he makes onto the Sobek, that's when they're down like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 meaningful gold. Without that play, Exordium likely get the Fire Giant just kind of in the game right there. So I think that certainly could be a strong vote as well. But really, Insignium, once they sort of got their even footing back, they played so well.
I think that Joshi also was just very mindful of his positioning, and
Yes.
that helped out Lasbra so much, especially on some of those Phoenix defenses. He didn't have to worry about his Hunter being one of the main damage dealers in those defenses, getting picked off. So very smart moves, I think, on Insignium's end. And I am still in just a little bit of disbelief, Finch, because that looked like a match that Exordium probably should have closed out before the 30-minute mark even hit, and Insignium just not allowing them to do so.
Bro, that's what good teams do, though, right? That is what a team like Insignium will do. Whatever that small crack or window is, they're going to find their way through it and be able to find their victory there. But look at how reliant they were on Death Banner's damage on Insignium. I didn't even realize that 31,000 was double nearly anyone else. Joshi, I believe, was second, but they didn't get much from Lasber. He had a hard time finding his way in on those team fights. They were so reliant on Death Banner to really kind of chip everyone down.
And Death Banner probably knew that he had to definitely step it up on this one, because Lasbra, like we saw from Exordium multiple times, they just stayed so grouped up all the time, and it was because they were trying to prevent Lasbra from having any real chances to work his way into the back line and look for picks onto their carry. So Lasbra unintentionally focused out, I believe, with the way that Exordium chose to group.
Yeah, and not to say that I think Lasber played poorly, just that, you know, he sort of didn't have a really an opportunity in, since they fell behind early. They were suddenly in those long engaged sieges, and Cirquet can struggle a little bit in those matchups. I think that that's why a lot of the burden ended up going towards Death Banner and Joshi, and they stepped up in a huge way. Insignium bouncing back, but looking maybe a little bit shaky here, Taco. Those early objective focuses from them, that was a little bit too weak.
Most certainly was not a very easy time for Insignium there, but they managed to find the win in the end. And now, moving on into the next set between Poppies and Sacred Speed Buff, I think that the Poppies and Sacred Speedbuff are both looking for their own respective wins, just like that of Insignium.
That's right. Got to change gears. It's tough after a game like that, right? Where they just barely get it on that Titan kill at the end. But that's what's got to get done here. Poppy's and Sacred Speedbuff. Poppy's able to grab that win earlier last week. Sacred Speedbuff still haven't been able to find it. And they're in that double header as well, so they really are going to need to be able to look good here for week 2. It's an important week for them. But Poppy's, they're not going to make that easy.
And Poppy's already choosing to ban away the Baron and the Chernobog. Arguably two of the most favorite picks right now. And they don't have to worry about it. Being in the first pick selection slot also, this is a chance for them to take Freya if they so desire, but Ne Zha going to be the priority here instead.
I like it. Ne Zha, man, in the jungle just feels so strong, but I said Ne Zha in the jungle, perhaps getting a bit ahead of myself. We've seen some Ne Zha supports here as well, haven't we? So Ne Zha, not a guarantee of where that's going, just a very strong pick right now.
Freya, though, going to be immediately snatched up there by Sacred Speedbuff, paired alongside of the Sylvanas, and this is a smart move, I think, because if the Freya does happen to end up in the Hunter role with the Sylvanas, she'll have no issues in terms of survivability and lane clear.
That's a ton of clear, yeah.
Those two will definitely be able to make pretty quick work of just about anything that comes at them in that duo side. And again, this isn't necessarily a guarantee that it'll be Freya in the Hunter role. This could very well be Freya in mid. I think that's where we tend to see her most played.
Looks like it is going to be Ne Zha on a bit of an off roll here, Taco, as the Ratatosker gets locked in for the Poppies. They're going to pair that with the Soul, which we saw Angry Day pilot rather well, actually. Just unfortunately, Exordium couldn't find that win, but we just saw this Soul be put to great use last game. See if Poppies can do the same.
This could be a Ratatosker solo.
Oh, sure.
That is one thing to keep in mind, that in case the Poppies want to keep up heavy aggression, by throwing Ratatosker into the Soul lane, I think Rat can be a bit of a lane bully.
Yeah.
So Secret Speedbuff are still going to have to play it relatively safe here. I think that they're definitely going to want a god in that Soul lane that can either match the level of aggression that Ratatosker brings to the table, or just look for a god that has really safe self-sustain in the waves and won't have to worry about getting poked out too heavily or out-rotated.
Jingwei going to be the pickup, so that does mean we will be seeing the Freya more than likely in that middle lane now, and Jingwei going to be our Hunter for it. And then they're going to follow that up with a Hercules Neath ban, so still without the Hunter on the table for Poppies. They want to make sure that some of the good double Hunter options are limited, and take away that Hercules Bullion lane away too.
And I like the Bellona choice here out of Sacred Speedbuff. Like I mentioned, Ratatosker can be a little bit of a lane bully, and Bellona in solo still going to have to be mindful of how she chooses to utilize that bludgeon for the lane clear. Acorn Blast can stun her out from that initial clear, but having cleave damage for the waves is also pretty beneficial there. And I just think that Bellona provides a solid level of pressure, but with Osiris now getting snatched up, Poppy's looking like a Ne Zha support game, Finch.
That's what I'm seeing here as well, so Osiris likely going over the solo lane then, and Rat in the jungle. But even that's not guaranteed. We've seen some Osiris jungle and Rat solo. I mean, I'm not 100% sold on where anything on that Poppy's roster is going. I just know that they've got 5 dang good picks available to them, right? This is a good roster that they've got available to them, as Sacred Speedbuff are going to close it out with that Nemesis pick.
Early game pressure seems to be the clear focus for Poppies.
Yes,
they are looking to pack a punch from the moment that this game hits go.
They should be able to do that without any trouble, but we'll not delay you any further. Let's go ahead and move right into the action. Poppies up against Sacred Speedbuff and figure out exactly where everything's going. And it's actually going to be the Rat in the support role, Taco. The Rat support.
Oh, how could we not see that one coming, Finch?
Oh no, get me out of here. Where's the escape button? Someone please not see that coming. Oh man. But you're right, yeah. Ratatasker support. I mean, what's he looking for with this one? Because we know what Ne Zha can do, right? He has some control elements with the Sash, with that Windfire Wheels, can still do some decent damage, building utility. Ratatasker, though, from Draco Marino, I mean, what's he looking for?
Well, right now it seems like he's looking for Get Fisher speed buff. Draco Marino and Julio both hovering around that speed. And it's interesting, but no one from Sacred Speedbuff really seems to mind. Worst Turtle going to try and self-clear his own, but Big SV and Fisher both not willing to take any chances. They know what's happening on their speed buff. They want Worst Turtles instead.
They're going to come for the invade, and Worst Turtle's taking a ton of damage. Bludgeon is brutal early on. Worst Turtle has got to flee. Speed buff invade successful. They'll trade on the other side, but now Flippo in danger in middle lane. Warchi finds the kill there. It's a madhouse early on in this game as Chekio is going to go grab red.
Flippo was so focused on clearing the way that he forgot you can't just tank every single in-hand from Chekio this early on. Warchi and Chekio not even remotely concerned about what's happening here. Streak Up as a level 1 Jingwei just does not have the kill potential that you would probably want here. And Poppy's ending up with the first blood. Now it's the biggest B who's in a whole lot of trouble. Here as Julio pops the sprint.
Good shell.
Perfect shell.
That should be enough to keep him alive, but Taco, I was right there with you. That looked like a potential second kill. Julio and Draco Marino couldn't quite find it, but they essentially traded jungles, I think we saw. We saw Poppy's sort of clear out the Chaos side and the opposite for Sacred Speed buff. Draco Marino, he may be the support, but he's not supporting. Why is he here? Why is he here?
It appears as though the Poppies are attempting to run a double jungle strategy in hopes that they're able to apply enough pressure early on to essentially keep Sacred Speed buff locked out from the experience that they would want to try and directly challenge any member of the Poppies. But this is a rather risky strategy because as long as Sacred Speed buff don't funnel into anything early on and don't end up with any snowball death potential here, then the Poppies could end up struggling as the game approaches more towards the mid and late stages.
This is tough. Check out soloing these Oracles. They do a lot of damage early on. I don't know about this one. He's going to be very low. I guess he's planning on backing anyway.
I think the Oracles are soloing him, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a curious
I don't think
decision.
he's really soloing those with the damage that he took there. And that's a interesting timer for a back as well. Gonna pick up that T2 of the Devourer Gauntlets. So clear that he's trying to rush Devos in the hopes that he can keep up with Jingwei's self-sustain off of her passive. But I am surprised to see him wanting to back that early on. He will miss a full wave of experience for that.
He absolutely will. He's going to settle for those back Harpies instead. Red buff being looked at by Warchi and Draco Marino, the other jungle here in this game. He is still going with the Guardian's Blessing as Draco, so it's not as if he's, they're running like 2 assassins and having the 2 of them split up. He definitely is still wanting the assist credit for all that extra gold and to try and keep that spooling going in his favor. But Draco Marino has not set foot in duo lane. This is not to support Chekio. They are trusting this ROM to sort of hold that duo lane and stay relevant up against Streak.
And they're allowed to do so because they know that it would have been a Freya or a Jingwei. Neither of those guys really having, or really being all that interested, I believe, in the Hunter role as far as pressuring out early on. Typically, it takes a little bit of time to get some itemization going first, and then you start to see the moments of aggression happening.
Draco Marino getting chased now by Get Fisher here near solo lane. Big SB is right here with him, but they're not looking to fight. It's a 2v2, reminiscent of old solo lane, right? Where the jungler would spend a lot more time in solo with them, and you saw these 2v2s a lot more often, but not so much here in Season 5. There's just so much farm on the map to get that they're usually there. But I guess not when there's 2 junglers, right? You can afford to spend a little more time in solo.
Honestly, Finch, it just feels like Flippo took a very unnecessary death there at level 1 in mid-wave. And speaking of which, Worst Turtle now looking to try and punish out Streak Up. Agility already being used and Sash off the mark there from Worst Turtle. Probably should have just waited.
Yes.
Patience is a virtue.
To the end of the dash, right? Where it would have been much easier to hit. I guess he's worried that... No, Streak Up didn't have the ultimate either. Curious timing, but it doesn't grab it, so Streak Up does make it on out of there and holds on to the Purification Beach as well. Unsuccessful early gank.
I was expecting him to just wait for the agility to end and then win Fire and Wheels off of that in case she tries to escape one more time. You already know that agility's still on cooldown, incredibly long cooldown for a Jingwei, probably only 1 point in it as well. So, Worst Turtle had time, just seemed to get a little impatient.
Bit ahead of himself, and Streak Up will be able to survive as a result of that one and continue up the farm train. Despite the fact that they're playing these double jungle-ish strat, as, again, Draco Marino spent no time in duo, there hasn't been a ton of aggression from them aside of that first kill in Flippo. They have been routinely stealing away jungle camps like this, as Draco Marino is going to try and find red, but we've seen a Sylvanas steal stuff before, and he will defend.
Mr. Stefan had no problems out-securing Draco Marino on that one. Rattata will end up grabbing this Ratatosker, and now Streak Up looking for the punish here. Valkyrie being used out of Flippo because he's trying to make that KDA go even again, but it's Mr. Stefan in the end who winds up with the kill.
Worst Turtle responds with the Windfire Wheels onto Flippo. Supernova's right there in the follow-up, so Warchi will find that kill, but now Worst Turtle is in a little bit of trouble here as Get Fisher dashes through and finds one more route, lands onto Warchi, who has little mana to speak of, but Get Fisher thinking better of it, just going to come back and farm the middle lane.
I like the decision-making process there from Fisher to not choose to aggress into Warchi. He knew he had that passive stacked and ready to go. Full heat, pretty much, so those in-hands are swinging. And there's just no reason to try and risk engaging there when Warchi would definitely have the advantage.
Didn't want to go for it, so Warchi will fall back. Feeling rather comfortable here in this middle lane. Remember, early on, able to find that kill on Flippo, and since then has been able to farm relatively freely. A bit of an XP lead over Flippo, who's a little bit slower. Went with that Book of Thoth start, too, so Warchi has an advantage in movement speed as well.
Flippo just feels a lot like hindsight is 2020 this match so far. We're only 6.5 minutes in, but he died level 1 for pretty much no reason other than tanking up an entire in-hand Astral Arrow trade from Chekio and Warchi. And not only that, but he kind of used that Freya ultimate unnecessarily. I don't think there was any chance whatsoever of Jacob Marino escaping there from Mr. Stefan and Streak Up, and yet he expended that Valkyrie's Discretion anyway to try and look for a last hit. Now Flippo, and again, being aggressed on one more time, not at a high enough health bar for Jacob Marino to have to worry about dropping out on that kill.
Yeah, Draco Marino doesn't need it because Warchi's right there with the auto attack to confirm the kill. Windfire Wheels has one more target up in the air. Looks like it's going to be Get Fisher. Comes right back down to a world of hurt. Mr. Stefan too late with that Wrath of Terror. That means Chekio can find a kill with the snipes. The scope is good from the young lad on the ROM, and that's 3 quick kills going the way of Poppies.
Very quick and precise there from the Poppies, just fully punishing Sacred Speed Buff. And Flippo, one more time, a little bit too far up on his own. Just going to get gobbled up by the likes of the Poppies. And this is what Poppies were hoping for, I think. They just wanted all of this aggression because they were hoping Sacred Speed will kind of play into it, which they have in a sense. Finding one pick is all it takes. This draft from Poppies benefits heavily off of single target focus.
And they were able to get that done. So essentially, Sacred Speed Buff, they kind of come to them in waves in that fight, which, as you said, is exactly the way that Poppies went into fighting that, and they excelled in it. Now Sacred Speed Buff find themselves down nearly 3,000 gold, about the same in experience as well. It's been these repeated buff invades and that nice last big fight that kind of helped create that distance between.
Life's only getting more rough for Get Fisher because he's competing with Draco Veneno and Worst Turtle for his own jungle as is. But when his teammates are dying constantly on duo, it's not giving the Nemesis a whole lot of room to work with in terms of making up for that missed experience from the jungle camps that are being invaded.
Yeah, this is a risky strat, but Draco has made it work for his team, staying relevant with Mr. Stefan there on the Sylvanas and keeping the rest of the sort of creating space for Worst Turtle, to strip away farm. It has helped greatly that Warchi has been able to comfortably farm in mid too with that early lead that they got against Flippo, and since then it's been going all their way, and now Big SB might be in trouble again.
Could be. Eagles rally, though, into T1, going to provide enough safety measures for the Big SB. Speaking of which, that bludgeon swinging away onto Jacob Marino, that was half of Rattatasker's health.
It absolutely swings, man. I still think Balloon is great over in the solo lane. A ton of fun to watch her play and her impact, and we might even see a little bit more once Berserker Shield available for her. It's something she can utilize quite well. But not going to be the case here today. Big SB is just kind of putting out a little bit of the hurt the old-fashioned way as Draco Marino forces Get Fisher turn around and drop the ultimate, but he's got Julio right here in support. Bludgeon gets good damage, but the knockup lands on both, and Get Fisher goes back to base.
Sprint has been popped from both of the supports, and Julio going to be able to run away from that Wrath of Terror out of Mr. Stefan. Cost him his Lord of the Afterlife, but he has no worries about that because his team all the while takes the Gold Fury for free, recognizing that everyone from Sacred Speed Buff is on the opposite side of the map.
That was perfect from Poppies. That couldn't have gone any better, really. They find the kill and they find the Gold Fury. They don't get punished from the left-hand side of the map. In fact, they do the punishing, and they managed to get Julio back out of there because, keyly enough, they were able to find that kill without using Lord of the Afterlife. That was the big difference maker, I feel like, in that one.
Poppies just have Sacred Speed Buff looking every which direction except where they need to be focusing at that exact moment. You kind of just lose track of the fact that there's a Soul and a ROM on the Poppies when you see Jacob Marino and Julio so deeply invested into their solo side jungle.
Yeah, and the difference has been that there's one more you know, errant player that you have to worry about earlier on in the form of Draco Marino on this rat, right? Instead of one gank from Worst Turtle, all right, I know where the Naja is, I'm okay here in solo. Well, maybe this time it's Draco Marino who's ganking, and it's the same for everyone else on the map. There are a ton of questions you have to answer early, and it really stresses your communication, as now Mr. Stefan is getting harassed a little bit. Warchi free to cast and put in the in-hand damage, that's all it takes.
Warchi just completely ignoring Flippo there on the backside, and Flippo honestly just wasn't able to even get close enough to try and help out Mr. Stefan there. One of the downsides of being the tree. Sure, you get some great early laning clear, but you are one immobile target throughout the rest of the match.
It does. Sylvanas kind of feels in waves, doesn't he? As Flippo now in some trouble here in the mid lane. Just too aggressive here. The rest of the team is coming for the wraparound the backside. Valkyrie's discretion sets up Slice and Dice, but Supernova chunks get Fisher. Draco Marino's up on the tree. He jumps in anyway and ends up falling to Flippo.
Warchi will make sure to pick up Get Fisher in the end there, but now Streak Up helps Flippo to make sure that he can stay alive, and that's going to be Warchi's first death of the match, in fact. That Soul was on a bit of a tear there at 5-0, now going to be 5-1 instead, and this is going to buy Sacred Speed Buff just a little bit of time to farm up here, maybe even look for the Pyromancer, as Flippo and Mr. Stefan are both trying to control this objective.
Well, hopefully Flippo will forgive me there for questioning the step up just now, because clearly that was calculated out, and it ends up working in Sacred Speed Buff's favor heavily. They cannot grab the Pyromancer, though. Julio shows face, and that is enough to get Sacred Speed Buff to back off. A bit of an overstep from Poppies in the mid lane by that Tier 2 tower does grant a reprieve now to the Chaos side, where they can try and farm up and catch up to the chaos that this double jungle strat, if you want to call it that, has sort of created.
And I understand, actually, hold that thought. Mr. Stefan going to get whooped immediately after sashing onto Mr. Stefan. Still managing to find the tree, though, and looking to take him for a spin. Draco Marino waiting at the bottom alongside of Warchi, but this could be the turnaround for Sacred Speed Buff.
Mr. Stefan just barely survives, but Sacred Speed Buff don't have the damage to look for anything further. I thought for sure he was dead to rights there, because Whoop and Wrath of Terra happened at the same time. Unfortunate. And he didn't have that available for Peel, but ended up not needing it and just barely makes it back to base. Gotta think Lotus Crown helped a lot there.
I want to go back to that fight, though, underneath Sacred Speed Buff's T2 tower area. I'm a little bit surprised that Poppies chose to try and fight that deep, just because their draft has worked out so well getting control in the early game, that trade-outs are not what the Poppies want to look for here. You don't want any real opportunity for this Ratatosker to fall behind. And I know he still has a 2-level advantage over Mr. Stefan despite that death, but the Poppies are still needing to be pretty mindful, I believe, of just how deep they are going.
Draco Marino's gotten pulled, but he's still standing tall. Supernova, all those charges feels like hit and get Fisher, and he has to dash away. Warchi, Worst Turtle, and Draco all still charging forward, but there's not much more here in the mid lane. But I agree, they've been thriving off these sort of 3v1 picks they've been able to find, not so much these like prolonged fights in the middle lane.
A great disengage, though, by Sacred Speed Buff to not funnel into any more of the Poppy's aggression here. It's getting a little bit more obvious, I feel, of what the Poppy's game plan is to Sacred Speed Buff, and they're doing everything in their power to not feed into it as much.
And you have to make those adjustments quickly on the fly. It's Julio horrific emblems and looks for the stun. Worst Turtle can't find the Windfire Wheels, but Get Fisher's trapped in between 3. Checkio hits a couple shots. The third one's there as well to chip away as the slow lands. Jukes the Lord of the Afterlife. Get Fisher somehow still alive, but Julio is trying to hunt him down.
Everybody from the Poppies focusing out the T1 tower to make sure that they could take down the big SB and Get Fisher. Both of them dying.
Wow.
No rotation so far from Sacred Speed Buff, as Mr. Stefan also ends up getting caught up on the backside.
There's no way to rotate to that. There's 5 members on solo side of the map. There's really not much Sacred Speed Buff can do. Now the Tier 2 tower on the right-hand side going to fall. Streak Up is going to try, it looks like, to at least solo the Gold Fury in answer to what the Poppies have done here, and he does have a good bit of damage to try and burn it down, but already Worst Turtle and Draco Marino are on their way.
This could be trouble here for Sacred Speed Buff. They had no idea the Najah would be here already, but Worst Turtle actually biting off a little bit more than he could chew there. Flippo putting in some great damage. Acorn Blast also not going to manage to connect, but the Poppies, this is a win.
Yes. They didn't need those. I agree. They didn't need the kills at all. Stopping the Gold Fury Taco, I'm right there with you. That's a win by itself because they just 5-man rotated to solo, got a tier 1 and tier 2 tower and 3 kills.
Oh no, Julio also managing to steal away Sacred Speed Buff's red buff.
Feels bad.
And look at this, the Poppies wasting no time whatsoever, going straight onto the Gold Fury. Sacred Speed Buff has no idea. Julio's whooped up in the air, but he doesn't care. His team already got the gold.
Lord of the Afterlife used defensively. Get Fisher gets sashed, gets controlled up into the air with the Windfire wheels, and Draco Marino will be waiting for him when he lands. Another easy pick for Poppies. 5 members now to surge down the middle lane up against just 3 in the middle lane as Big SB is over on the solo side of the map. Worst Turtle going to take up the tower so they can just start chunking it down because Warchi's in full heat.
I don't think that Sacred Speed Buff had a single team fighting moment yet. This is the closest they've come, and Draco Marino finally getting a little bit punished here, but it's quickly answered by Chekio onto Mr. Stefan. If you want to take one of us down, you're definitely going to end up losing another, and that is a very direct message from the Poppies that Sacred Speed Buff are forcibly receiving.
They just have not been able to find a way to slow down this immense pressure from Poppies. Tier 1 tower in duo will be a thing of distant memory before too long. Tier 2 tower could certainly be right behind it as these 2 auto attackers have a minion wave they're pushing up, but Chekio giving up on it for now. Warchi doesn't want it either. They've got an 11,000 or 10,000 rather gold lead to their name, even more than the experience lead, which we don't often see it be that much higher than the experience too, but they are definitely in control.
And Poppies have just done a great job at stretching Sacred Speed Buff so thin. And Sacred Speed Buff, I mean, in a sense, they kept playing into it. There was a brief period where Sacred Speed Buff were like, no, we're just going to group and kill you instead. And then it kind of just fell apart because the Poppies have just had this nonstop barrage of 2 to 3 members constantly looking to swarm just a single target out of Sacred Speed Buff. They just took a little bit too long to begin their grouping period.
It's favored the Poppies in a pretty major way. They're now considering the Fire Giant, or at least they have a couple people here around this side of the map. And the options for Sacred Speed Buff are starting to dwindle as they're down some tremendous deficits. Chekio rolling in onto Big SB. He does have the Thorns and Get Fisher here in support, but he goes up into the air. Gonna get the Horrific Emblem to slow him down. That sets up the snipe. Shell keeps him alive as well. Sacred Speed Buff are extending this fight for what it's worth.
Oh, and Chekio's gonna manage to survive thanks to some beautiful peel out of the rest of the Poppies. Flippo's still open to find a return kill and will take down Warchi with that Valkyrie's Discretion, but he's not out of the red zone just yet. Worst Turtle still looking for a flank here. Has that Shield of Regrowth passive also to give him a little bit more movement speed, and this should be a quick and easy ring toss. Worst Turtle, however, gonna end up getting caught out instead.
Worst Turtle is incredibly low. Flippo, the hero they need, finds the kill as a result. Julio, though, gonna chase down the Fray of the Slow, gets immune by the beads, and now Draco Marino is low on the backside. A huge fight by Sacred Speed Buff, and all the credit in the world to Big SB for surviving as long as he did to set up for Flippo's impact.
Just a little surprised there at how delayed Worst Turtle's purification beats were. I'm surprised he didn't preemptively try to use them to avoid the whoop that was sure to come from Flippo, but quick reactions from Flippo are going to be what saves his life in the end.
They recognized he was coming that whole time too, and were very easily able to deter him down. So now the Poppies have had this game slowed down a little bit after their aggression in solo, and trying to find that pick quickly into Big SB. That's probably not the target they want to burn down with all those relics there to help him out. But they can regroup and try one more time here on the Fire Giant. They won't have a ton of relics available. Beads and Egg is going to be down for Warchi and Chekio as Flippo finds a nice bandage, but he's still being chased.
They're not over this just yet. Julio still looking for Flippo. Lord of the Afterlife over the wall, and Flippo ends up panning downwards, but they weren't expecting the rotation out of the Big SB. Strika going to end up killing Warchi. Draco Marino will finally take down Flippo, but this is an absolute chaotic fiesta for the Poppies.
Chekio trying to trade out with Get Fisher, and Worst Turtle will help that go their way. Big SB trying to hunt down Chekio. The slow lands, bludgeon, dunks him into the dirt. A big knockup comes in all 3 members from Mr. Stefan. Now Big SB has a double kill. Worst Turtle's got to run for the hills, but Airstrike being used to close the distance. Sacred Speed Buff answering back now to Poppies. All of a sudden, having that Ratatosker as your only big take really is not going to get it done.
The Poppies just went way too deep there for Flippo, and they expended so much to commit to that kill.
Both ults, yeah.
They just need to make sure. I understand that their composition kind of relies on target pick focus, but you don't want only 2 of your members that deep into enemy territory. Now Julio trying to buy his team a little bit of time here until those respawns occur. At least Sacred Speed Buff are not able to just look for the Fire Giant right away.
Warchi is going to loop around, though, on the left-hand side. Big SB not quite as tanky up against the magic damage. Has to use the ultimate defensively. Shell keeps him alive. Streak Up is low as well. Supernova gets the double kill. Streak Up and Big SB both go down. Warchi coming up big. Flippo dunks him right back in return, but a 2-for-1 in Poppy's favor.
And all the while, Worst Turtle just trying to work down Mr. Steph, and this tree is going to land right in the center of everybody. But now Worst Turtle, he's got to answer to Flippo and get Fisher upon landing. And one more time, a 2-for-3 exchange between the Poppies and Sacred Speed Buff. But with all the carries taken off the map, not a lot to try and contest here from Sacred Speed Buff. They're just going to drop a ward on that FG instead. Chekio is still alive here for the Poppies, but they don't want to take that Fire Giant without having Warchi.
They give up on it for now. Instead, going to come over to the duo side of the map, duo jungle, and just farm up their buff safely. But team fight after team fight, man, Poppies are not able to win by as hefty of a margin as they once were. Sacred Speed Buff are finding some clapbacks. Flippo doing a good job with the Found for his discretion. Big SB is entirely too tanky for the Poppies roster right now as well, and they can't kill him quickly enough. The time to kill increases, and so this draft starts to get worse and worse.
It does feel a little bit, though, Finch, like both sides are kind of losing track of what the real objective here is in the match, and that is to take the objectives in the first place. That was the first Gold Fury in quite some time here. And
it's not the prolonged fights just on the solo side of the map.
These fights are just so unnecessary from both teams. Honestly, I don't really see a good reason for either side to be diving so deep for the other, because neither is profiting. They're both just kind of coming to a stalemate. If anything, this is in favor of Sacred Speed Buff. I take that back. This is the Poppies squandering a well-established lead.
Now, they are still very far out in terms of gold. They're almost done with their builds. They got to sell off those blessings to really finish everything off, but they're about an item out in front of nearly everyone on Sacred Speed Buff. But, as you said, that will continue to dwindle the longer that this match goes on, and Sacred Speed Buff are able to just sort of passively farm. Poppy's now showing some restraint, warding up here around the Fire Giant and trying to establish control.
Even now, it feels like the Poppies kind of wasted all that early game lead that they'd built up, because Flippo, he's got the damage to turn and burn, no problem. Same goes for Streak Up, so the Poppies initially having no concerns whatsoever about how deeply they were choosing to dive any single carry from Sacred Speed Buff. Now, having to pay a little bit more so, and Chekio trying to dash away, getting pulled right back in. No, it's Worst Turtle instead. He gets grabbed up by Mr. Steffens.
But he's going to respond with a Windfire Wheels of his own. That means that Streak Up will be the target. He does end up very low as a result. Supernova's been committed, but Chekio's the one that falls 1-for-1. Hunter for Hunter. Warchi now getting chased down by Big SB with Get Fisher coming in to return the favor. Disapparates in, goes in for the slow, and Get Fisher needs the auto attacks. Big SB finds that kill. Julio gets pulled back in as well. Flippo finds the shots, and that should be enough, but can't find the second.
Root there from Mr. Stefan, going to ensure that Sacred Speed Buff wind up on top here. And Draco Marino, the lone survivor, this Ratatosker, but there's only so much that a Ratatosker can do on his own accord. It's very low likelihood that he'll actually be able to try and defend this Fire Giant without that through the Cosmos Ultimate to look for the big securing moment here. And I just feel, I can't help but feel like the Poppies went a little bit off the rails here, just spent so much time trying to find kills that they ended up missing out on the real abusable period of their lead.
Yeah, and now it's getting to the point now where they can't kill them fast enough. You know, they can't pick them off cleanly enough to where they're able to just have a numbers advantage on the back end of it, which is kind of what accelerated them throughout that early game. And the response has been very strong from Sacred Speed Buff. Now they have the, 5 or 4v1 advantage. Draco Marino very likely not going to be able to defend this one by himself, as we should be able to hop back into the game here in just a moment. And that should create the opportunity for Sacred Speed Buff now to start barreling down some of these towers and finishing off these builds.
Somebody's got to buy Big SB dinner tonight, though, from Sacred Speed Buff, because he is, without a doubt, the only reason why Sacred Speed Buff's last few engagements have gone so
100%.
dominantly in their favor. This Bologna pick is starting to pay off huge for the team. And Poppies, they've got Julio, but that's it in terms of frontline. Nobody cares about the Ratatoskr support at this point, especially not with that build. The Shifter Shield, I understand the aggression, and it worked out really well for Jacob Marino early on, but now you're at the period where you need a little bit of frontline to try and deal with the shred protections out of Fissure, Flippo's burst, Streak Up's burst, and it's just so overwhelming for the Poppies that they can't keep track of just one target any longer from Sacred Speed Buff. Now, Sacred Speed Buff have a frontline carry or a frontline member for each of their carries, and whether it's Big SB or Mr. Stefan absorbing blows, it doesn't really matter. It's just so long as it happens.
Fire Giant now tackle on all 5 members. Sacred Speed Buff grab that Tier 1 tower, but look at this. Poppies are positioning like they want to defend on the Tier 2 tower. They recognize they still have some gold lead from earlier on and don't want to give it up for free just because Sacred Speed Buff have the Fire Giant, and they will indeed go to the right side instead of taking the fight. So Poppies defend the mid Tier 2, but aren't in position for the right.
Outside of Mr. Stefan, though, there's no real experience disparity between any of these members, and even then, Draco Marina might be level 18, but who cares? It's a Ratatoskr support. You're gonna get bursted by Fissure if he wants to expend that Nemesis ultimate, and I think that's also been pretty key here, is Fissure's placement of that Nemesis ult has definitely helped out quite a lot in these engagements.
Yeah, those base stats might be relevant for Mr. Stefan, but what, he's missing some level up points in the pull at this point? You know, that's not particularly relevant. So yeah, Mr. Stefan is essentially doing everything they're going to need from him anyway. So I'm right there with you. The experience lead seems very much irrelevant. The gold, that is also approaching irrelevance, and it's also shrinking, only about 6,600 in favor now of the Poppies when it was once closer to 10,000.
And I just want to remind everybody, that experience lead was also a right on par with the gold lead initially. It was 10,000, 11,000 experience in the Poppies' favor.
Normalized.
And there's just nothing to be done about it. They spent too much time fighting.
And sometimes you still have the experience lead even though everyone's level 20. The experience has been normalized. That should show you just how well Sacred Speed Buff have been fighting back as Mr. Stefan finds the 2-man knockup. Shell comes out in response, and Mr. Stefan gets bursted immediately. Draco Marino putting on the hurt. He goes right back up into the air for the re-engage as has to disengage here, a streak up with the airstrike.
Draco Marino waiting, well-timed there to focus out Flippo. Now, the Poppies hoping for a turnaround, but Flippo's still going to buy himself just a little bit more time. Julio actually getting aggressed onto by Fissure because Flippo just blew up Draco Marino in an instant.
Warchi comes in on the backside, Slice and Dice definitely puts in the hurt, but Sash lands onto Flippo. Worst Turtle having a hard time boxing alone, but is eventually able to find that kill. It's a big fight in favor of the Poppies, 3 for 1, and they still have the 4 members they need, but look at Get Fissure. He wants to try and loop around the back end, but check kill life stealing up way too much. Big SB wants to go in for the fight. Warchi gonna be the target. Get Fissure has Julio on the back end, but Big SB can't stand up against all this damage. He's getting chunked down as well. Warchi can't find the last auto, but Big SB's on the run.
Great looks there by Fissure, though, with the blink, slice, and dice. Will manage to pick up one. And with Mr. Stefan having just respawned Streak Up shortly after, and not too certain that this T2 tower is going to end up falling here. Chekio having a rough time about it, going to get knocked up. This should be the end of Chekio. And sure enough, Fissure going to claim the life of the ROM. So a T2 tower for the Poppies, but more importantly, they prevent the siege out of Sacred Speed Buff. Finally being grouped up, and I guess kind of forcibly grouped up by Sacred Speed Buff underneath their T2 towers, but it pays off. This time around, it was Sacred Speed Buff who seemed to lose track of where the initiation should have began, and I think Mr. Stefan as well probably has to be a bit more mindful in terms of looking for those blink ults, because he was just chunked immediately by Chekio and Warchi.
This does, however, slow down Sacred Speed Buff. You're right, that was their Fire Giant push, and they could find nothing on the back end of it, but really, neither could Poppies. They did find that final Tier 2 tower and at least break it down, but they lost Chekio on the back end, which essentially made it, what, a 4 for 3 overall? Relatively even fight in both favors, and now at this point, with like this last Tier 2 items being finished off, we consider this game even. It's really who has the Fire Giant is the one who has any kind of lead or advantage in these battles, as they have been so back and forth, so close for this last 15 minutes or so it's felt between these teams, neither side able to find a significant advantage.
curious as to whether or not the Poppies are going to look to defend here. Sacred Speed Buff already starting to pull the initial pull onto the Fire Giant, down to about 75% health. Poppies, if they want to make a move, now's their time to show face.
And they have pushed back Sacred Speed Buff off the Fire Giant, at least for now. Poppies are not going to let them have this one. They are certainly here for the defense this time as Warchi tries to keep that heat stacked right on up. But Sacred Speed Buff playing it patient. They've got a ward down. They can see where the entirety of Poppies are.
Also, keep an eye out for Jacob Marino actually picking up that Emperor's armor. It wants to make sure that they have as much tower impact as possible underneath those sieges, just in case Sacred Speed Buff wind up getting the Fire Giant yet again.
It does look like that's a bit of an eye towards the actual siege stage, but to be honest, Poppies haven't really gotten a chance to put that to work at all yet. They haven't really had any sieges as Mr. Stefan does control Draco Marino, who never even makes it up to the sky. Flippo deletes him, two-man dunk comes out from the big SB. That's another kill for Sacred Speed Buff as Orgy goes back to base. Chekio can't get off the ground either. Get Fisher now makes their third kill of the fight. Worst Turtle trading out with Get Fisher on the back end, but Sacred Speed Buff are running the table.
Worst Turtle choosing to not expend that Windfire and Wheels just yet onto Get Fisher in the concern that he'd end up dying upon landing because Sacred Speed would probably just be waiting for him at the bottom.
Fire Giant now, Sacred Speed Buffs, after an impressive fight, they were able to get a...
Go right lane! Why are you backing?
You know, they wanted to spend some gold.
What? 3 members dead for 30 seconds and no one bothers to push down the right-hand side to force a Phoenix?
That is rough. By the time they make it down there, Draco Marino and Warchi should all be back up. Everyone will be back up. It'll be a full 5-on-5. So it is very curious. They weren't particularly low off the back end of that either. They didn't really buy too many big power spike items. In fact, Mr. Stefan still has that 6th slot he's waiting on finishing out as well. So they could have certainly taken down that Phoenix just now, but instead, they will wait patiently.
I'm baffled, Finch.
I'm with you.
It doesn't make sense, but better safe than sorry, I guess, to a degree. Sacred Speed Buff taking that the whole 9 yards, pretty much, because Worst Turtle and Julio, if they are that frightening to Sacred Speed Buff that they don't feel comfortable pushing down the right-hand side, then power to them. Going to look for those creep favorings in the other lanes instead. There's still two T2 towers remaining for the Poppies that Sacred Speed Buff have full intentions of taking down this time around. Struggled a little bit on that left-hand T2 tower siege last time they had the Fire Giant in their favor, so now Sacred Speed Buff, I am hoping that they're not going to send in Mr. Stefan as the Blink Ultimate Sylvanas to just get destroyed again by Chekio and Warchi. Instead, I'd kind of want to see the big SB taking initial tower aggro because he can probably absorb most of the blows right now.
He has been a tremendous force for them as the Tier 2 tower takes some poke. Poppy's putting on a bit of a show of defense right now, trying to force Sacred Speed Buff to trade health for tower damage, and it's worked so far. Tier 2 tower in left was being looked at by Kit Fisher, but he has rejoined the battle in mid, and Poppy's, all 5 members are here for the defense and making it hard on Sacred Speed Buff.
Mr. Stefan was looking for a cheeky pull there onto Julio, but not going to be able to find it. This T2 in mid has been chunked pretty heavily, and Big SB was at half health, now already back up to full.
Tier 2 tower siege gonna be the call. Big SB goes in first. Pull does land onto Julio, and the follow-up is there, but even better follow-up coming out from Warchi. That sends everyone running for the hills. Julio's low. Big SB controls him and bludgeon slams him into the ground.
Great job there by the Big SB, but he'll pay for it with his life. Draco Marino still not over this either, trying to chase down into the jungle, looking for Streak Up. If Poppies had managed to find the Jingwei, that would have been very beneficial to preventing a lot of Sacred Speed Buff's tower push potential, but now they're just going to have to try and defend without their main frontlining aspect, and that's Julio.
Worst Turtle up in the air, immediately comes back down to lose half his health. Tier 2 tower finally falls after they have to trade both their solo laners to make it happen. But Sacred Speed Buff can't find much more, considering the back here is Get Fisher, Flippo retreating as well. Remember, this was starting with Sacred Speed Buff had the man advantage, the Fire Giant, Sylvanas sustain, and a chance to go push down that right Phoenix. Instead, they have gotten one Tier 2 tower. We'll see if they can get anything.
It was just the Lord of the Afterlife from Julio. That anti-heal, it was the main reason why Sacred Speed Buff chose to back off in the manner they did. An immediate disengage because they just did not want to risk losing Streak Up or Flippo during that siege would have just delayed things even further. But it's evident how much trouble this Poppy's burst damage composition is giving Sacred Speed Buff underneath these objectives. I'm just hoping that the next time Sacred Speed Buff have 3 members killed from the Poppies for 30 seconds or more, they choose to try and challenge a Phoenix structure, because in a raw 5v5, they're just encountering a lot of difficulties.
If you're a Sacred Speed Buff fan, you're hoping they'll have the chance to make that decision again, as the Poppies have been looking a bit stalwart in their defense so far, making even a Tier 2 tower siege with Fire Giant a difficult subject to try and breach for Sacred Speed Buff. Fire Giant should be back up in another 45 seconds. That buff has fallen off of the Sacred Speed Buff squad. They'll grab Pyromancer's Knife buff for themselves, but Taco starting to feel like it's not going to be an easy victory for either team.
It most certainly is not. Finch, Sacred Speed Buff, 35.5 minutes in climbing into this one. And it's been a very heavy brawl between these two teams. 50 kills on totaling for this match. So it's definitely been a brawl, Finch.
That it has. Fire Giant now should be respawning and already firmly positioned her Sacred Speed Buff. Up until now, Poppies have been contesting these Fire Giants, and I don't see any reason why that would need to change for them, Taco. They don't have a Phoenix that's down and Fire Minions to worry about or anything like that. And they can certainly still fight in the jungle. In fact, their fight might be even a little bit better in the jungle, but this time they're not going to be here for it. Sacred Speed Buff just going to burn it for themselves.
I think I'm on the opposite side of that. I don't think that the Poppies fight in the jungle is strong any longer. I think if anything, they would be dominated in the jungle engagement now, because of Sacred Speed Buff having a little bit of a better mid to late game composition in terms of just peeling for their carries. That was the main issue and the main reason why the Poppies ended up having to play from the counter-engaging side anyway, because they kept fighting to the point where Sacred Speed Buff were like, okay, well, we were farming and engaging because we don't really lose anything if you guys are spending all of your time just fighting instead of taking objectives and forcing out our structures or forcing out the map pressure from us. So Sacred Speed Buff still in a really good spot here. I think that the Poppies can most certainly turn things around with a really strong engage underneath their own Phoenixes, especially Draco Marina having that Emperors. That's probably going to be one of their best defending assets.
Mr. Stefan has one of his own as well to try and keep the odds moving in their own favor. But I think you're onto it, Taco. It's harder now to pick them off. I mean, Flippo has the Book of the Dead and Magai's Cloak. Get Fisher has the shield and is hard to kill. It's really only Streak Up that's still an easy target. Everyone else on Sacred Speed Buff will require a significant commitment to bring down. And that's why Poppies hit that wall 20 minutes ago, it felt like, because it has just gotten that much harder for them to find their picks, as Sacred Speed Buff want the Phoenix on the left-hand side.
And I actually like this from Fisher, keeping the pressure pushed up in the mid-wave. I kind of want to see Sacred Speed Buff looking to commit, though, to a dual Phoenix engagement. I think that that's probably going to be their best opportunity for directly sieging, because if the Poppies are all grouped up, then they're going to have enough damage to line up next to the others. So look for a little bit more. And Worst Turtle trying to find a sash on to get Fisher to pull that Magai's Cloak. BSB already underneath this Phoenix gets some nice bludgeon damage onto Warchi, and that's going to be the end of the left side Phoenix.
First one of the game going down in favor of Sacred Speed Buff, but Chekio going up trying to find the shots. He will turn his attention back around towards the target up in the air being controlled. It was Big SB, and Chekio had no problem finishing him off when he landed. So Sacred Speed Buff get the Phoenix, but they lose the life of their solo lane.
The base has finally been breached, however, from Poppy. So now Sacred Speed Buff, all they really need is a couple of picks. 2-3 picks, and they can close this one out.
Right.
And Poppies have to be aware of it. Right now, they're the ones with the advantage in the 4v5, hoping to maybe find any lazy backers here, but Sacred Speed Buff not looking to take any chances. They're running all the way home.
They have put on their Nikes, and they are running back to the base, trying to do everything they can to get away. Warchi trying to slow him down, trying to see if he can find any more poke, but nothing's there. Sacred Speed Buff continuing the disengage, but Poppies, they pushed up this middle wave the entire time, Taco. They want a chance for a return Phoenix of their own, and with Big SB down for their 18 seconds, they might have a chance, but they think better of it and fall back.
Just a little bit too risky with that Bologna respawning so soon. I think that Sacred Speed Buff could have definitely held off underneath any of those Phoenixes, even with creep waves coming in, it wouldn't have benefited the Poppies all that much because they have to get so close. A lot of their damage also, we haven't had a chance to touch on this either, but Worst Turtle, Draco Marino, and Julio all have to be melee range, so it's up close and personal from the Poppies or bust.
Amazing.
That's right. They're reliant on those auto attackers as well. Warchi can circumvent that a little bit with the Supernova, but even then it doesn't feel quite like you might get from a Thoth, from a Ra, from some of these other mages who can get that big damage off from range. So they got to make sure they're fully in committing, and both teams feel a bit all in, don't they? So that's kind of why these fights have been so even, right? Like 2 or 3 people getting killed, because even if you do find your pick, you're so far committed position-wise that the other team can find the return. And up till now, it's been relatively even, as now Fire Giant going to have to respawn one more time, 1 more minute away.
This feels weird, though, Finch. I mean, we spent, what, maybe 28 minutes just watching both of these teams kind of go at it, and the action has really come to a little bit of a lull here, as I think it's started to really sink in for the Poppies that they don't have the same sort of lead that they used to.
Yeah, that this early game kind of snowball type competition with the Ratatosker support here, that it definitely got them the early advantage, but that they couldn't translate that through the mid game and once those big team fights started breaking out, right? So it's been kind of a slow degradation of that game plan ever since then. Now Sacred Speed Buff going to try and capitalize.
Check it out, though, Draco Marino. No more shifter shield. The gloves are off. This is a full investment towards Tank Ratatosker. And that Mantle of Discord, I think, hoping to service is a bit of a mini Gebolt there. Maybe that second stun can buy the Poppies enough time to disengage or possibly even find a kill onto Sacred Speed Buff.
The bitter realization that a little bit more damage from Draco Marino will not this game make, right? It's going to be some survivability, the chance for him to get off more stuns and knockups and protection shreds and try and facilitate for Warchi and Chekio, who at this point are shredding anyone who steps anywhere near them. So Draco Marino trying to facilitate them the best he can.
And to be fair, this is a composition that the Poppies were probably expecting to close the match out before the 30-minute mark even had a chance to surface. And again, that just comes back to the Poppies' past mistakes haunting them right now, in that they just wasted so much time fighting.
Some heavy overcommits and some excellent play from Big SB, who's impressed me here today as well on this Bologna so far. He's really been that tool that's kind of slowed down when the Poppies are over-aggressing, when they're trying to, be able to come away with a couple picks and regroup. He's not been allowing them and absorbing a bunch of damage. Big SB's been instrumental as they look for the right side Phoenix, opposite side of the one they've already got.
I like what the Poppies did here, though, by pushing out the left-hand Phoenix side so heavily. There is still a couple of fire waves remaining, I believe, as Sacred Speed Buff's creep wave takes over that of the Poppies. That's going to force a response from Worst Turtle, and while Worst Turtle's on the opposite side of the map, this is the real time for split push to happen, because Get Fisher trying to pressure out middle, actually going to come and join the engagement. Draco Marino already falling so low.
And he does get taken down. Flippo finds that kill. Julio has been kind of forced in as the front line, but immediate response from Flippo. Chekio with the scope, wants to try and find the shots, but can't bring anyone low enough for a kill. So Sacred Speed Buff fall back one more time, but keep an eye on those minions in duo lane, Taco. They are threatening that Phoenix.
Chekio's precision was enough, though, to force Flippo's Aegis, and that's going to be an important relic on cooldown. No longer going to have a chance to immune any damage put out onto him. And Worst Turtle still on that opposite end. The Sacred Speed Buff, though, just feeling a little bit too unhealthy to want to push in here, trying to get some sustain going for the Big SB, and waiting for that next creep wave to arrive before they look for the final push.
Blink in from Get Fisher. Big SB is going to drop the Eagles rally. Warchi going to need a little bit of help. Aegis allows him to reposition. Phoenix goes down, and Worst Turtle has to use the ultimate defensively to retreat. Sacred Speed Buff find the whoop as well, but don't want to aggress any further. They have been playing it patiently for 43.5 minutes. No reason to change it now. Not on the cusp of victory.
I like that from Flippo also. Realizes that he whoops the full health Osiris and is like, nah, not for me.
Yeah, nothing more there.
Full on back off here, but now Sacred Speed Buff are going to have to spend a little bit of time grabbing the creep wave from mid. Worst Turtle did a really nice job of making sure to push out left and mid on his own accord. It did end up costing the Poppies their right-hand Phoenix, but this isn't the first time the Poppies have lost a Phoenix.
Left side, Phoenix should be okay at this point, though. They've got that minion wave pushed out far enough, and Sacred Speed Buff have all the way back to base. They have about another minute on that Fire Giant, but you know what? The Fire Giant is going to keep spawning back in, and you keep getting chances to go grab it and give one more attempt to go make this siege happen. So there's no reason why Sacred Speed Buff can't play this at the pace that works for them. And so far, it has worked. They had to find a way to regroup to that strategy so quickly that Poppies came out with. It's a best of one. They weren't going to get another chance. And they were able to eventually do it to slow them down, to keep this game kind of down in the mud where they want it. And now they have a chance to come in and grab this victory. They're pushing down the left side Phoenix where the Phoenix is already weakened and not even waiting on the respawn of the Fire Giant. They don't have much more time on it. This will be a relatively even fight.
Unfortunate for Sacred Speed Buff, though, that they've had to spend so much of their Fire Giant time just getting the creep waves into their favor after that successful right-hand siege. And the Poppies still looking to hold on, but this is a weakened Phoenix, so it might be a little bit easier here for Sacred Speed Buff to push in.
Flippo even chunking Julio with that first shot. Freya feeling still relatively potent after some of those changes she went through, and we're seeing some of her strength on display here. Julio and Dracarino both have been pulled. Wrath of Tira avoided by Lord of the Afterlife. Flippo up into the air with the Valkyrie's discretion, returns good damage, but Big SB drops down the flag. This is where we're fighting, or maybe not, as everyone runs away, and Draco Marino finds a nice two-man knockup.
Julio gonna get pulled back into the fray, however, and Flippo makes quick work of him. Sacred Speed Buff now with the clear man advantage, 4v5. 3 members still fairly low, though, and no Fire Giants sustain to keep them healthy. This is all relying on Mr. Stefan, but the Poppies also having some troubles with staggering their backs. There's fire waves pouring in now from the right-hand side that they kind of lost track of during this engagement from Sacred Speed Buff.
And Julio is their truest frontline presence. Yes, Ratatoskr is built full tank, but he's nothing compared to what the Osiris is as far as their, absorbing up the damage. So now without Julio, the path through should be that much clearer for Sacred Speed Buff to try and force down this Phoenix. Minion wave has breached the line. Mr. Stefan lands the 3-man knockup. Chekio pulled back in. Aegis immunes the damage, and he has to roll out for safety. Warchi on the retreat path as well. Left side Phoenix down, and the collapse on the worst turtle has begun. Sacred Speed Buff with one more kill.
2 members dead from the Poppies, but Julio is about to respawn in 20 seconds or less, and I don't think that Sacred Speed Buff feel comfortable pushing in because of the damage output from Warchi and Chekio. This is yet another disengage from Sacred Speed Buff. Fire Giant has already respawned, however, and I'd imagine that that's going to be the next place Sacred Speed Buff are headed.
I imagine so here, Taco. Phoenix down and left. Phoenix in right, though, is due to respawn momentarily, but the Titan won't be regenning not until all 3 Phoenixes are back up. And remember, the 2 outside ones remain weakened and a little bit easier for Sacred Speed Buff to break down. We're going to grab Pyro, grab FG, and look for one more siege. And Poppy's still dealing with the repercussions of sort of an all-in early game strategy that now they find themselves 47.5 minutes into a game. Kind of wishing they had a few more control tools to make things easier. Someone just a little bit bulkier to soak up some of this damage the way that Mr. Stefan can, the way that Big SB can.
And Streak Up now trying to make sure that he can help his team finish this one off. Right-hand Phoenix has respawned, however, for the Poppy, so that's a small benefit for the team that the engagements are lasting long enough that the Phoenixes are able to respawn. But with that left-hand side still missing for quite a moment longer. No,
Whoa.
Actually, it's going to be the Poppies looking to catch Sacred Speed Buff off guard here.
Supernova does land. That brings everyone on Sacred Speed Buff relatively low. A knockup comes through, but responds from Flippo to go up, and Streak Up finds Warchi as a result. Chekio comes back down, and the surge is on from Sacred Speed Buff. They're trying to deal with Julio in the back line, and Streak Up is more than capable. A double kill for the Hunter. Big SB chases down Chekio and avoids a Windfire Wheel. Worst Turtle off the mark, and Big SB coming up huge.
Worst Turtle needed to connect there. Sacred Speed Buff makes quick work of the Poppies, and Finch, this one's finally going to be coming to a close here thanks to some over-aggression out of the Poppies. But I respect the shot call.
They were right. The Poppies had been slowly whittled down over the last 28 minutes, Taco, and I think that they had sort of realized that this composition was not going to be able to get it done in a 50-minute Phoenix defense. And that's just too late in the game, so they try and all-in them in the jungle, get them low, and try and use that pick comp that worked so far early on in the game, but at this point, it's just too late.
It looked like they pounced just a little bit too soon there. Maybe should have allowed a deeper investment there from Sacred Speedbuff. They were already headed in that direction, so I think the Poppies, that might have ended up working out in their favor had they waited just a couple more seconds before springing. But sometimes when you go for the all-or-nothing calls, it's a heavy risk versus reward situation, and this time it just ended up being a big reward for Sacred Speedbuff.
In the form of a victory, they are able to grab that set victory. Sacred Speedbuff much needed it, but their work is not done. They've got some more games coming up. But we'll go back to that last set. Who was your MVP from that one? Go ahead and vote for us now. I'm pretty sure it should be Big SB, but Taco, anyone else kind of stick out for you?
I think it's got to be Big SB all the way on this one, Finch. He just did, not only was he zoning, he was also providing frontline peel for his carries and killing the carries of the Poppies on his own. That was very beneficial from the Bologna, and had Big SB not been there, I think that the Poppies, despite having wasted a little bit of time with those engagements, probably still would have ended up finding a victory here without the Bologna interference.
Yeah, and that last fight really kind of highlighted that, I believe, where he was able to drop down, the Eagles rally. They were able to sort of fight there with some of that extra protections they grabbed. The great play to hunt down Checkio and avoid Windfire Wheels. The game probably over at that point, but it certainly signified what went so well for them. But it was really those fights for me around solo side near the Fire Giant, around 17, 18, 20 minutes or so, where Poppies continually overcommit, and it's Big SB that punishes them for it.
Yeah, they just kept going so deep so often, and then finally it ended up just working against them. And I think that was all that Sacred Speedbuff were really waiting for. Big SB especially seizing the moment.
Selected there as your MVP out there in Mixer Chat. Thanks again for voting for us in the poll. And I'm right there with y'all on this one. I think y'all got this one exactly right. Now, of course, he had a ton of follow-up. I think we'd be remiss to not give Flippo a ton of credit for how well he positioned and timed his Valkyrie's discretion to return that damage as well. But in the order of event, he's only given the opportunity to be sick because Big SB, you know, continually did everything he had to do.
Yeah, I'll hand it to Flippo. He started off pretty questionable with that Freya pick at the beginning, and then after the fourth death, I think that was right around the period where he was like, okay, maybe I should start watching my positioning a little bit better here. I'll do my team that much. And the follow-up was really nice out of Streak Up and Flippo throughout the mid and later portions of the match. So definitely strong stuff out of Sacred Speedbuff.
And I like what we saw here from them because, you know, in these best of ones sometimes, these kind of strategies, that big snowball that happens right away, if they get rolling and kind of roll over you, then it's over. You don't even get a chance to fight back. But they showed here that if you kind of can group up, if you can stay calm in those moments and have, you know, hero forms like Big SB, obviously, then you can slow those strategies down and certainly still find ways to get those victories. And that's what happened here. Sacred Speedbuff came out the better team.
And a really well-played match out of Sacred Speedbuff, and that's going to help them with moving their way on up in the standings.
That's right. One more win to help them out. But again, we're not done with the SML. It might feel like it, but we've still got more action coming your way. So a quick break while that game and all the players get ready, and we will be right back.
And then there was one. The single match remains here for our European SMITE minor league action. I'm Tom, that's Aggro, and we're going to get into it. Optimus Gang taking on Sacred Speed Buff. SSB coming off of a win. They just beat up the Poppies.
But it took them a while to do so, whereas Optimus Gang at the beginning of the day took care of business pretty quickly up against their opposition, Milky Way. So I think that Optimus Gang is probably coming into this with a lot of confidence. Sacred Speed Buff as well, winning long games like that could energize you as a team.
Sure.
It can also drain you, so we'll see how well they can perform here.
Very excited to see what's going to go on. Optimus Gang, a lot of oddball picks today. We've seen 2 Naja supports. Optimus Gang does like to play around with their positioning as well, so
sure.
I want to see what we're going to see. Is Sibi going to be playing the solo Kumbhakarna again?
I mean, it worked out in his last game, so it wouldn't surprise me if we got to see him go back to it. Optimus Gang just feels like a team that knows that they are in a really good position to compete for top of this league, and they may as well try and threaten other teams with different looks. You know, don't become predictable in your picks and bans.
Well, right now, the Giannis ban, first and foremost. No surprise for longtime SMITE fans, but this chunk of meta, kind of surprising. We're used to seeing Freya, Baron, Naja almost banned entirely. But this time, a different world in the minor league. No Giannis, no Agni, no Chernobog is the 4th one. And no Eratatasker. So Freya's available, the Naja's available, the Baron Samadi's available, but SSB going to go for the Freya, the Valkyrie, first pick overall.
So we'll see if Optimus Gang want to go for that Giannis, or excuse me, that's banned, the Baron is what I was thinking of, and they will go straight to it. With Fusefy already playing that Naja on the support role, you know that he's looking elsewhere just outside of that Guardian tab. This wouldn't surprise me at all if it went towards support or towards solo, and this Naja could kind of do the same.
And if I'm Optimus Gang, number one, if I'm coach of Optimus Gang, this is a very big positive that my team can play around in different positions, because SSB don't know what to ban next.
Right.
If they pick a Hunter, there's no telling where Baron, Samadi, and Naja are going all across the map. So what exactly do you ban? And if I'm OGG, what I do is I put those characters wherever they didn't ban out, right?
Yeah.
So you're able to just take advantage. Jingwei and Sylvanas going to be hanging with Freya.
I wouldn't mind a mid lane pick or a Hunter pick, but it looks like it's going to be the jungle for Johnny with this Ao Kuang.
wow.
And this is something that, you know, even though it does kind of tip your hand a little bit, that it puts these Baron and Naja is going to be in a side lane, not in the jungle, at least for the Naja. Johnny's Ao Kuang is good enough that I don't really care.
And that's kind of where I was going. I think a lot of people are sitting here going, you could have picked Ao Kuang after the break. I'm not sure you can when you've got Johnny over here actually is the embodiment of Ao Kuang. Even, I mean, this is as off meta as you can get, probably. I don't think Ao Kuang is being played by anybody else, and still have to think about it in your head about being banned out. So Optimus Gang going for the comfort pick. I do love it.
I love it too. And now if I'm Optimus Gang, I'm looking for something to get a little bit more pressure for him. Neath in the mid lane is where exactly where I'd be looking. Rom gets you pressure in duo, at least initially. So this pick is totally fine by Optimus Gang. I've got no problems with it. I'm interested to see what they're going to put in mid, though, because I think that Ao Kuang, so much of what he brings and so much of what he does is all focused on his mid to late game. But in order to get there, he really needs a mid laner that can enable him to get there.
Is Baron that mid laner?
No, absolutely not. You don't clear the wave early enough. You use all your mana. You have to back all the time. Arachne is interesting, and you're given a face, but I like it here because it really gives Baron a ton of trouble. Can't get away from the Arachne. It gives Ao Kuang a ton of trouble because even if you use that water illusion and stealth away, then those webs will follow you. And I am shocked about this Nuwa pick because this is the exact opposite of what I think you want to pair with Ao Kuang.
I would agree.
Anti-pressure the whole way. You're sitting under tower now with this Nuwa the majority of the time. And this means that the jungle is now very susceptible for a Sacred Speed Buff to maybe go in and take some stuff away from Johnny and keep him off that early game.
Yeah, I do think that is something that we've got to be thinking about here for Ao Kuang. I want to look towards that late game. So does Nuwa and Rom. Let's just get right to it. SSB taking on Optimus Gang with some oddball picks along the way.
It is going to be Sibi on the Baron in the solo lane. This feels a little bit better to me because now instead of spreading out, you've got a little bit of pressure in duo because the Rom. You got a little bit of pressure in solo because Naja. This makes it a little bit easier as Sibi walked into the gank, and it was the perfect time that Getfisher and SB had actually given up on ganking him coming the lane. And look at that. Sibi goes for a horrific emblem first.
I love it.
I don't know. It could work. It definitely could work for him. but it's definitely risky because he's trying to use that as basically a lower cooldown sprint to get away from Getfisher.
Yep.
But he's going to be slowed as well from the webs. I don't know.
A little bit. I do like the horrific emblem. Mr. Stefan doesn't like anything that's going on in this lane. An early first blood. If Optimus can catch up.
No,
and the turnaround route might be
slow. Okay, he's dead now. He's dead because that's slow from Caspanify.
What are you doing?
It's good! Straight through the uprights. Fusify.
Mr. Stefan is jumping for joy.
Yeah, that is absolutely first blood if Fusify hits a goalpost there.
I mean,
either in the form of the minion on his right or the Sylvanas on his left, but
that is wow.
I mean, he drilled that field goal, man. That was dead center.
That certainly did happen. I'm still in shock. I don't really know how to respond to that. Level 2 on the Hunter because Streak Up was able to solo the red buff, ensuring that Flippo and Streak Up would both get it after the invade. So a nice play there from Sacred Speed buff. Going back to the horrific emblem, not only does it slow, but don't forget it's also going to slow that attack speed as well. And if you can get away, you're trying to get away and lowering the damage of the Arachne at the same time. And that's, of course, only under duress. Once you are able to be a little bit more tanky and a little bit more in control of the situation, then you're just really neutering what the Arachne can do. So without a sprint, and a lot of times Arachne won't go sprint because she vests into the Hasten Katana, then Getfisher is going to be kind of in trouble. So early game, we might see Sibby kind of get punished for this relic choice. But once the mid to late game starts hitting where the Baron becomes Baron, I think the option will certainly pay dividends.
Sibby's doing exactly what he should be doing in this spot, which is accepting that this is where he lives now, underneath his own tower. No reason to step up and get poked out and then end up getting ganked because of it.
Yeah.
This Guardian's Blessing is interesting. We see it a lot on Sobek, on, well, Guardians that are in the solo lane because they accept that they're going to lose a lot of gold to the tower and to the other minions, and you end up getting that increased gold spooling. I still think Mage's Blessing would have been attractive in this position for Sibby just to up his clear a little bit faster, but this Guardian's Blessing is him really accepting that he is just going to be sitting under tower all game.
Yeah, it's almost an interesting card to play here as Farrakrick gets walked down just a little bit in the sense that you're putting your Guardian's Blessing on the playfield and saying, I've outsmarted you, Arachne. You know what I mean? You are. That is the statement that you're making. You're saying, I'm not going to be ganked by you. I know what I have to do. Whereas if you are playing a little bit more aggressive with mages or otherwise, you know, you're going to be stepping up. You're going to try and get those stacks, and the Arachne can kind of take advantage of it. When you're at the pro level, there's so many games that are unsaid, so many rules that are unwritten, and I think that's what Sibby's doing by buying the Guardian's Blessing. He's, in not so many words, saying, I know your game plan, and I'm one step ahead of it.
I just wonder that if you can play around it in a different way, and the way that would be more natural for me, I think, is to go the Mage's Blessing, sit under tower anyways through the first 8 minutes of the game. And then once your Consigned Spirits is maxed, once you start to get some points in that Vivid Gaze, you can start out-poking the Bellona, and that's going to bring Getfisher over to you, and that's where Johnny comes in and is going to get free kills for... If the Big SB is going to be using Eagle's Rally to try and kill Sibby, that means he's an execute target, and his death for Johnny's favor is more impactful than Sibby's death in Getfisher's favor. I think that playing around your overall team comp, yes, this is better for Sibby, but I think there is a world where he can use himself as bait to get Johnny ahead. I've
never really been a fan of the Guardian's Blessing. It's one of those things where I understand it, I get it, yes, it makes sense. I would rather you be a little bit more offensive.
Well, it's the argument of, well, I'm getting more gold, but the counter argument, and one that I think is really valid, is, well, you had to lose gold to get more gold.
Exactly.
You are choosing to not last hit and choosing to let the towers and minions take those for you. Minions not as big of a deal, but especially tower shots, meaning that you're going to end up net even, maybe slightly net positive, instead of just getting lane pressure and staying ahead from the beginning. That's always felt a little bit weird to me.
Our commentary aside, it is a go-to option for the professional players. And right now, looking to be in a good spot. The blink forward and the gobble up. Johnny on the spot. Chows down on the big Steefy Beefy.
This is what Baron brings to the solo lane, is the ability to just make sure that you have to use your ultimate defensively. If that's I don't know, name another mage in the solo lane. A Chang'e, for example. Zhang Kui. Yeah, Zhang Kui might slow you. Chang'e will stun you, but it's 1 second, and then you can start walking away. Baron will pull you in, stun you for a good duration, and deal a lot of damage, and now you're really far out of position. And Johnny just gets an easy execute going. And there's not a whole lot of ward vision along the top side. SB has a lot of ward towards the bottom half, near blue buff, but otherwise, that's an easy gank route for Johnny to take.
I mean, go with me on this journey. It's comparable to Sobek, who has been one of the most dominant solo laners in the game, where his idea is he plucks you behind him, he tail whips you, and then he slows you forever, forcing you to jump away. The only reason that you're not going to do that is because you're not threatened by Sobek's damage. Well, guess what? Baron does a very similar set of executions while also dealing percent damage of your health bar. So it's you see the dominance that Sobek has had, and you kind of transpose that to where Baron is, and I think it makes a lot of sense as to why this pick has been some choice.
Naja onto the Sylvanas. I don't think this is exactly what Fusify was looking for. Flippo trying to punish him for it, and he will with Valkyrie's discretion. Farrakrick next on the list. Beads used, but one more shot from Flippo should get it done. Johnny, though, is able to get in there and get that execute onto Mr. Steffen.
Yeah, beautiful play by Johnny. Sibby off screen gets the solo kill onto Mr. SB. And Johnny right there kind of taking advantage of the enemy looking in the other direction.
Johnny used the blink just to get to the speed in time. Get Fisher trying to take this boxing one-on-one. Perfect time to get that water illusion mana up from Johnny. And now Flippo is going to meet up with Sibby as well. And this is the nightmare scenario for Sacred Speed Buff.
Farrakrick picks up one, Fusify picks up the other, and very quickly it's 5-1. Optimus Gang. This team has habitually been number 2, with Insignum kind of being the go-to minor leaguers. Don't forget, they are your summer split victors of the minor league. And when you look at what Optimus Gang has been able to do, it's very impressive. And you got to start asking, you know, the first week you look at the standings and you go, well, they only played 1 week. I think you got to look at the standings and go, well, maybe it's a little bit different now.
Maybe they only have 1 more week, 1 more chance to play against Optimus Gang right now. I agree with you. I think Optimus Gang is looking, just based on the eye test, like the best team in Europe right now. Though, as you mentioned, definitely have to respect how that Insignum is your defending champion of not just Europe, but of all the minor league after taking it to Very Nice to Me during the summer finals. But I do think that Optimus Gang is ready to challenge for that title.
Straight up, they just look better than they did in the summer and the spring split.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And it's been a long time coming. When the Pro League was larger, we had more teams in there. Farrakrick, Hispanify used to be with another player, and used to see these guys at the pro level. So not a surprise to see them sort of get it on back. Johnny holding the ult there allows Get Fisher to escape. Left side, a little more action. Fusify, not as lonely as he'd like to be, and Flippo gets number 2 for his team. And Johnny again answers back with that Alquang.
He's going to get Fisher here too, man. Johnny is huge. In this game, I mean, you picked the Arachne to set the Alquang behind early, and that plan has come and gone. Yeah. It is already too late. Just 9 minutes in, set this Alquang behind. He's 4-0, and it's not just 4 kills. It's that 3 of those have been executes. So now he has extra magical power, extra magical lifesteal, and he's only getting better. He's past the hardest part of his game. And this game is looking ugly for Sacred Speed Buff. And this is about as ugly as a 1K deficit can be, like a 1.8K deficit can be. That's it. But
it feels so much larger.
It feels like the game is already getting to the point where Sacred Speed Buff have got to do something desperate, because this entire XP lead is in Johnny's court, and that's good news and bad news for Sacred Speed Buff. The bad news is Johnny's playing his best god, who's incredible with a lead. He's got a lead, and he's going to push it, and I don't know that anyone has the damage to stop him right away. The bad news, though, or I guess the good news, I should say, for Sacred Speed Buff, is that it's all on one player. Sure. So if they do manage to kill Johnny, then this big feeling of, oh, we've got no chance, can go away very quickly. So Johnny should probably consider playing a little bit more conservatively than he normally would with a lead like this, just because the rest of his team doesn't have it quite yet.
Well, the Pyromancer started by Sacred Speed Buff, and it's going to be finished by Optimus Gang. Team fight after the fact. Johnny being controlled up top by Sibby, but he's lifted by Filippo. And Johnny, well, that's the kill you were looking for, Ryan.
That's huge. That's huge for Steefy Beefy there in the solo lane, as Fisher's got to use the beads. Fusify with a perfect sash from long range. SB left a little bit alone, but he's still awfully healthy in the midst of these three people.
Yeah, really no concern here for the runaway Malone until he turns around. I don't know if that was the move. Zashu stumbling between three separate members of Optimus Gang. Fusify, Farrakrick, and Sibby. Half HP on the Bologna. Now here comes help from Get Fisher. Farrakrick does take a big chunk, and with Freya showing up, this needs to be the exit.
Ooh, Sibby very low, but just able to get away from Get Fisher, who if he just had another level, had been able to finish whatever katana he's picking up. Could be hastened. Seen that a little bit more on Arachne as of late, but he goes for the slightly more traditional stone cutting, which is more focused on dealing damage and less about sticking to the opposition. I think this is pretty solid against Baron, though. Hasten Katana against Baron, how does he ever escape you in any form?
Yeah.
But both are fine. As long as Get Fisher's landing his web onto Sibby, then Baron won't be able to get away.
Johnny with the solo invade. In a lot of trouble. All of his movement tools are down, and his body's down as well as Get Fisher starts to step into himself. And gets kill number 1 for himself. Gold Fury pulled by Sacred Speed Buff. And with the vision granted to Farrakrick and his team by way of his ultimate, everybody sees it, and everybody will go ahead and leave.
This is best case scenario now for Sacred Speed Buff, that they kill Johnny twice in a row, where he gets nearly no additional farm in between respawns. Did hit level 12, but still, it also spread out between SB and Get Fisher. This is already looking a lot better for them very, very quickly. He's still ahead, don't get me wrong, but it's possible.
This is why we see Sacred Speed Buff get so aggressive. And I like the identification of the scenario. Mr. Stefan with a beautiful pull into the ult, and Get Fisher going to finish what he started. Farrakrick sits down the hard way. Tier 1 tower still standing. Actually very healthy, 40% or so. Flippo forces the ultimate. Kispanify makes the rotation all the way from the long lane. Get Fisher going to get rolled on, but he takes the ultimate. The Arachne is out of there.
Great play for Mr. Stefan. That pull on the Farrakrick was nice. The perfectly timed knock-up afterwards to make sure that Get Fisher gets that kill. Stefan played that engagement very well.
He's recently coming over from the mid lane, and although this might not be his most highlight play right now as he gets gobbled up by Johnny.
No, he got healed.
Squad. Stefan going to go down here, but I have liked his transition into the support role.
That's really big that he gets healed right before he gets executed, though, because now Johnny doesn't have that extra bit of health and can't reset the fight quite as well. Get Fisher is going to get reset back to base very quickly. That pathing not doing him any favors. It's a beautiful ring toss by Fusify. Sets up an easy double for Johnny.
That right there is why the assassin can play in the support role. We've seen how effective the sash stuns have been already. Obviously, there's the ultimate setup as well, but the ring bound, stripping protections, stripping the movement speed as well. The damage is irrelevant with the build, and that's totally fine. Being able to slow 2 players as they walk away from you is incredible. Because of that, Optimus Gang wind up with a 4,000 gold lead after they pick up the objective.
Someone told Johnny that it was time to stop trolling so much and get focused again, and all of a sudden he gets 3 more kills and is at 7-2.
You and I were able to commentate the beginning of our minor league day, and what we saw was Optimus Gang had their jungler Johnny on a hyper carry who got off to an early game lead, and despite a couple of setbacks was still able to just be the runaway train that Bakasura is. Ao Kuang, I don't think falls under the same. I use the term hyper carry extraordinarily sparingly, and Baka to me is a hyper carry where once he gets to that point, he's in the stratosphere and you can't pull him back down. I don't think Ao Kuang is the same sort of element, but I think it's something very similar where Johnny with a lead like this, 4 levels above the Arachne, this can feel nigh unstoppable.
I think that they both have moments where they feel unhandleable. It's just they're at different times.
Yeah.
Bakasura, 3-4 items deep, there's nothing you can do. And that I agree with. But once you get to 6 slot, Baka just can't really DPS you fast enough to keep himself alive a lot of the time. Whereas Ao Kuang, once you hit 5 to 6 items, there's really nothing you can do to stop his burst. You really have to play around it perfectly. You have to have consistent wards that are within blink range of wherever you are at any given time. You need relics up. You need Aegis and beads, because if he executes you, you need the beads. If he tries to just full combo you with 2 blink in, 3 auto attack, shoot the 2, use the 1, which all can be done in the span of about a second, it will kill any squishy. So I think it's much harder to deal with characters like Ao Kuang that they never leave their strongest spot.
Right.
Once they get there, they're at their strongest. Old Freya, current Bakasura, those are characters that 3-4 items in, they feel unstoppable, but once you get to 6, you kind of weathered the storm. I don't think there's any weathering the storm that is Ao Kuang.
Crashes, makes land. SB suffering right now. 3 deaths. Very, very quickly. Mr. Steffens had a wonderful game. This might not be on his highlight reel, though. 10% for the support player. Nua goes up. No slow just yet, but down goes Get Fisher as Johnny on the back end taking care of business. Spanify still going for it. And guess what? Johnny with the double un opens the door, and Optimus Gang will slam it on Sacred Speed Buff. Fire Giant is the target. Ryan, it's 16-6. And Optimus Gang only up about 5,500 gold, but Johnny's up 5.5 levels. And I think his team is feeling oh so clean.
Man, that same story as game 1 where of the day where we watched Optimus Gang take on Milky Way. Johnny was up 5 levels there as well.
Yep.
That tells me that in the future, against Optimus Gang, especially for Insignum, all eyes are going to be on Lasbra and how he can handle Johnny. And if he can just stay close enough, because Johnny clearly has a style, loves to play these characters that don't really rely on teamwork a whole lot, are really just about getting in there and doing assassin stuff in the back line. And so it's a huge pressure on not just Lasbra, but the entirety of Insignum or whomever Optimus Gang is playing against to keep track of him individually and try and take the rest of the team on whenever that point comes.
Johnny reminds me of classic adapting. Before he was the adapting.
Yeah.
This is what he did for his team. He was just this unmanageable free safety that would just walk around the map and frankly do whatever the hell he wanted. And 2 out of 20 games would be bad for him. But the vast majority, he would just run the world. Nobody could handle him. And that's how his team wound up finding games. And honestly, arguably, their first world championship. The second world championship for that squad came from the teamwork and everything that expanded from that. But this is where that team started. This is where that player started. And watching Johnny over the past, I'd say 1.5 years, it's been his real growth. I know he's been here for a long time. But the 1.5 years, I've really watched him grow into this crazy player. And honestly, we're talking about OG for the fall split. I mean, Johnny just could be that guy.
Sibby still on the run and was out and then blinks back in, but another perfect consigned spirits. Not only the heal, but the movement speed as well. Flippo's like, dude, can we end this? Finally, Sibby falls. Meanwhile, the left Phoenix is gone, in case you haven't been watching the minimap. SB could potentially fall, though it seems like he will not. Fusify gets 2 for 1, but left side Phoenix, left side tier 2, mid tier 2, those are all gone, and Optimus Gang feeling A-okay about that.
And look at who died. Sibby, who didn't have Fire Giant, and Fusify, the support player. Optimus Gang knew exactly what they were doing. That's that teamwork, and that's why I'm not here saying that this is the one-man Johnny show, is because he's doing, that's his role right now, is to be the Michael Jordan, but you need that supporting cast to distract, right?
Yes.
You need that supporting cast to spread the floor, to open the map, to be able to allow Johnny to play his ridiculous, obnoxious style. This is not going to be good.
Johnny might not be good for him here as he gets whooped, though. Didn't reveal him from the stealth, so I don't know that Optimus or Sacred Speed Buff knew what was going on. Get Fisher continues the chase, but Blink is good enough for Johnny, and he'll heal a whole lot with that Typhon's Bancrofts combo.
Johnny coming right back here, right behind. Has to turn around. Going to look back towards the jungler. The basic attacks are good because Painify takes care of one. Middle laner helps out. Down goes Get Fisher. Johnny on the bottom waiting for the support player. And he will pick up another one. 7 kills without a death. 11 in total for the contest. And Johnny, I got to say it, man. Johnny on the spot right now. Out of control. Thorns! Yeah, you thought, buddy. You thought.
This could be game. I mean, that's 4 dead. I think the comparison to adapting is a really spot on. I really feel like Johnny has that same sort of style where he really he just has those instincts of this is how I'm very efficient at killing the opposition.
Yeah.
Assassins need to be able to do that, but there's something different about the way that he seems to play these sorts of characters. I think it's a really good comparison, and I really think that Johnny is a top contender for Season 6 and forward of SPL level talent. I think he's getting to that point very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I always talk about how players need to have multiple sort of play styles a lot of the time, and if you're going to play a jungler, I want you to be able to play Kali, Hunbats, and Athena. When you're this good, that's totally fine. Don't play the setup characters, Johnny.
No.
Just don't.
There's no reason to.
Continue to do this and dunk on everybody that steps to you. Johnny right now has been one of my players to watch in the minor league. He's putting it lightly. I enjoy coming out and watching what Johnny does almost every time we see him and Optimus Gang play, and another win in the books.
The dude's a beast. There's no doubt about it. And like I said, I think that he is, if you're looking at Optimus Gang and how they can become the top end of Europe in the minor league, it's going to be centered around Johnny. It's not just the Johnny show. This team does very well. It's a good group effort, but it's all in the name of making sure Johnny looks good. And there's a reason for that. It's because that's their easiest way to win games.
Who's going to be the MVP? You can vote for Sibi and I won't frown, but I think
I will.
I think the Serbian sensation right here. It's all Johnny, baby.
That if you're voting for anyone but Johnny, I don't know what game you just watched. I don't.
I mean, that sequence that Sibi had her on the Fire Giant where he's moving to weaving.
Sure.
And Flippo just comes out and goes, you know what? I'll ult. Fine.
Right.
That's kind of fun.
Sure. That was fun to watch. It was also fun to watch Johnny keep the game quick and easy for Optimus Gang.
Yeah.
I think back to that fight in mid lane where it looks like it might start going poorly for Optimus Gang. The full commit onto a Sylvanas that wasn't exactly what you're looking for, and the fight is going Sacred Speed Buff's way, and then Johnny somehow executes Mr. Stefan underneath Tier 1 tower, and all of a sudden it's instantly in their favor.
Do want to mention before we head out, though, Mr. Stefan, the move from the middle lane to the support role played pretty well. Really can't knock him for the support play, especially after a role change like that. Certainly a big one, and want to give him a shout out for stepping on up. That's going to do it for myself and Ryan. We'll break it down on the desk.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Aggro, Finch, and Taco here to close out the day after just a loaded day of action, really, here in the European SMITE Minor League. Taco, I mean, we had so many to kind of go back through and just go over, but you had Tom kind of alluding to it, right? We had that big roster shakeup between Sacred Speed Buff and now Milky Way, Victoria's Secret. So there's a lot of moving pieces here in the minor league.
Yeah, after the first week performances, it seemed as though there were a couple of teams that were still unsatisfied with how they chose to have their current roster, so they did a couple of switch-ups, and that included roles also. And Mr. Stefan, I had to hand it to you. That support gameplay looked a lot better than how the ISIS broke down in week 1, but I think that, you know, it can be rough stuff at times, but to see player transitions like that from role to role is never an easy thing to accomplish, so really well done on that part, but didn't seem as though it worked out all the way for Sacred Speed Buff in the end there.
That's right. That Game 4 didn't work well for them, but to be fair to them, not much has worked up against Optimus Gang at all here in the fall, so you certainly had to feel too bad there. It wasn't just Mr. Stefan Streakup came over with him as well from that Victoria's Secret roster. Now Milky Way, they had to pick up some replacements there as well. They got E-Chrome down there and Rimac Doku, so they've got a bit of a different look, and that didn't really quite work for them in their game either, so things were a bit rough from them, but we did close out that game with that Optimus Gang versus Sacred Speed Buff game, and Johnny was selected as your MVP, and hard to imagine anyone being very surprised by that one. This guy's name feels almost synonymous with Ao Kwang at this point, and every time he gets it, he shows you why.
Probably the best Ao Kwang, without a doubt, so far in Europe that we've been able to witness. I would go so far as to argue that for even SPL gameplay, because Johnny just makes AO look that much easier than everybody else, and it's rather impressive stuff how he's able to not only help establish early game pressure on a god that's notorious for only really having presence in the mid to late.
And he did it, I think, a lot by kind of picking on Mr. Stefan in that support role here this time, kind of as an easy target for him, and allowed Johnny to sort of hit that ground rolling. But Optimus Gang sort of as a unit just really look that strong right now, don't they? They're able to win this game to close this day, but they started off the day with that setup against Milky Way. Kind of one of the few matches of the day that looked like it wasn't too difficult. They got out ahead early in that one. Johnny yet again for them on the Bakasura, but Ferrikrik on the Giannis as well. Really kind of just came roaring out of the gates.
I think Optimus Gang just did a great job in both of their matches today, and this is only going to help them further expand their lead in the standings. Closing out with Week 2 here for the SML, and Optimus Gang are sitting pretty above everybody else, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. Overall, I think the team is definitely satisfied with their performances for today, and it seemed evident that their teamwork was certainly there.
Yeah, Milky Way unfortunately not able to win, but again, that was up against one of the toughest competitions out there, so we'll see how that new look for them will end up looking once they start to go up against some other competition. Not very many people having much success up against Optimus Gang at all. But again, that was just set 1. Set 2, we saw Insignum kind of bounce back up against Exordium. And for what it's worth, I didn't think Insignum were going to be able to close that one out.
No, Insignum actually in a lot of danger, I think, of losing that second match there. But they ended up being able to bring it back just in the nick of time, and they're probably feeling a bit relieved that they didn't let that one go.
Yeah, Sylvanas to close it out right on that final Titan push, and it still kind of sticks out for me, those 2 moments we highlighted during the game, right, where Joshy's able to avoid that pluck, that lets him turn around, they get the kill to defend on the Fire Giant, and sort of the overcommit from Exordium around like the red buff right near those back camps. And so those 2 moments kind of stick out as where Insignum slowed down their momentum and kind of brought the game back to even.
And despite Exordium having experienced a loss here today, I still think that this team has a whole lot of potential. For what we saw for probably, honestly, for 30 out of the 33 minutes of that match was rather impressive out of Exordium. I think that they certainly handed it to Insignum. That match was not an easy feat for the team to overcome, and the fact that Exordium were doing such a great job staying toe-to-toe with them, I think speaks leaps and bounds of just how dangerous this team could actually wind up being later on.
Yeah, it does, and I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, and Signum haven't looked as dominant as they have in the past. I would say the entirety of Fall Split so far, and Exordium, I think, showed us something we hadn't seen yet, so that's certainly room for them to build. The next set, though, going on to set 3, Taka, was Poppies going up against Sacred Speed Buff, and this is another one that looked like it was going to go the other way from the beginning, right? Poppies had the rat support. They had the ball rolling early on.
A lot of flip-flopping between the leads in both of those matches, but for this circumstance, I think that was just the Poppies kind of squandering what should have been, I think, their match entirely. Exordium and Insignum, you know, there's a little bit more questionable moments there where you weren't really certain of who would take the W there, but for the lead that the Poppies had established at the beginning of this match, they definitely let this one get away from them. I think just funneling too much so into this over-aggressive antics, and it ended up coming back to bite them, and because Sacred Speed Buff, they just wrote it out and they dealt with it. They accepted that was just how things were going to go down in the early to mid game, and then as soon as they were able to break past and start transitioning more so into those heavy team fight engagements, that's when we really start to see the big SB really step it up there and start to take more control over those engagements.
Yeah, him on the Bologna really is what stood out for me, and you kind of saw in that last highlight, I think that's about where the Poppies highlights stop, about that 19.5 minute mark, 20 minutes, because that's when they started over-committing and over-pursuing those kills as you were sort of highlighting, and Big SP was a big part of, I think, punishing for that, chasing down some of those weaker targets. Some of his chase downs on Shekio kind of stick out in my mind as well, and that really sort of turned things around. So Sacred Speed Buff showing some grit, I think, in a big way. They can definitely kind of build off that, and that was going into a double header from them as well. So it's big a Sacred Speed Buff to be able to win that lengthy 50-minute match and then move right into their next one up against Optimus Gang. But unfortunately, we talked about this one a little bit already, that one just does not go their way. Johnny's pretty good.
It was an example of what happens when the snowball isn't wasted. That was pretty much the case there for Optimus Gang. They got off to a great start. Johnny knew what his target focus should be on. It's either solo or support every single time he gets that AO, and this time around just happened to be Mr. Stefan, who ended up being the casualty more often than not. Not a whole lot that a support can do by themselves. If an AO wants to kill you, chances are he'll be able to fully commit, and unfortunately for Sacred Speed Buff, they were just unable to appropriately respond.
And it's the pathing from Johnny that kind of sticks out to me. that's so impressive from it, right? Where he's able to loop around the back end. That last Gold Fury fight kind of highlights it, where he comes on the backside, able to get a bunch of autos in, even the dash for damage as well. So Johnny really can pilot. I feel like this Ao Kuang at a level that not a lot of other players can. But I mean, it was a busy day. Optimus Gang come out 2-0-1 and Insignium get another win, but it was very close. Sacred Speed Buff looked strong as well. The day kind of maybe wasn't predictable, but it feels like some of the better teams kind of won throughout the day. It all kind of evened itself out.
I would definitely have to agree with you on that, but I still feel as though we can probably expect some shakeups in the very near future
I agree.
from these matches. I think that they were close enough to where we definitely haven't had a chance to see everything that these teams have to offer quite yet.
No, not at all. And I do kind of want to see where these teams are all going to end up shaking out. Milky Way, again, do have to make those adjustments with that new roster position or roster swap they've got going on. They were kind of the ones that I feel like kind of left holding the bag, as Sacred Speed Buff were able to pull some of those members from Victoria's Secret, and they looked, I feel like, a little bit better for it as a result, or at least they did here today, though. That game against Optimus Gang was pretty rough. I mean, that just kind of, I think this is how it goes.
It's never an easy time,
no.
I think.
Like,
yeah.
if you're up against E Unite and you're losing, you get it. Up against Day and you lose, that's something that you get. But let's go ahead and take a look back at the actual schedule for those matches. Remember, we have more minor league coming y'all's way tomorrow, by the way of North America. So we'll get to see how those important matches all shake down. But remember, Insignium and Poppies played off stream, and Insignium were able to grab another win there. So they may have slipped a bit against Optimus Gang, and Exordia may have taken them up against the ropes, but they're getting the W's where they count.
And over in North America, a really important day for Armada and Sanguine, respectively. Both teams having their back-to-back sets, or I shouldn't say back-to-back for Armada, but definitely for Sanguine, and that's going to be not exactly the easiest of tasks to overcome, so will be interesting to see who actually winds up at the top of the standings by the end of tomorrow.
Yeah, those 2-game sets can be important. Also very important is that Very Nice to Me in 2.0 set. Very much want to see who can come out the winner of that one. But again, this is our overall broadcast schedule. Esports Weekly will be back on its normal time, Mondays, 10 a.m. We're going to see Taco and the rest of the squad do the picks. We'll recap all the leagues in case there's some matches that you mix. We heavily meme F. If he doesn't just meme himself, sometimes there is meme-friendly fire, and he kind of just makes himself the butt of the joke, and we just go along with it. But Global Series is going to be happening Tuesdays, Wednesdays. You saw the SML; those are Thursday, Fridays, and SPL should be Tuesday through Friday every day of the week right after.
And SPL, you guys can already expect plenty of action, but keep in mind that those Tuesday, Wednesday sets, those are actually 3 different sets as opposed to Thursday and Friday, where you only get 2 fun sets of the SPL, but definitely still a great time and plenty of insight that you can learn from those players.
Plenty of insight you can learn as they try to fight their way, Taco, towards the big show, towards HRX at DreamHack. That's where we have the that World Championship match there for SMITE, for console, for Paladins console. There's a ton going on November 16th through 18th. You're going to want to make sure you're there. HighResExpo.com. Open up another tab. Grab those tickets now so you can make sure you're there. Taco and I, she's already promised me we'll both be dabbing for you. As long as just remind us that we made that promise, we'll certainly do it for you.
Oh, wait. How did I get drawn into this discussion, Finch?
What do you mean?
That was your bit.
We talked about this just before.
Okay.
We have a walk from the green room here, and you said on the way, make sure you remind them I'm dabbing for them.
You know what? If you guys find me at the after party, I will happily dab for you. And speaking of which, make sure that you keep an eye out for those after party tickets in the first place if you do want a chance to have me dab or Finch dab.
That's probably when there will be the highest likelihood of dabbing happening, if I'm being honest, at that after party. But don't forget that you can still have a little bit of fun here in the meantime before we make it all the way to HRX by picking up some gems. That way you can get some of those skins that you enjoy. It's 35% off, so this is the time to bulk up on them. Before the Odyssey rolls out, maybe go ahead and grab that new Tier 5 Bologna skin. There's a lot of good stuff.
If any of those daily bundles have been sticking out to you lately, now would be the prime time to try and take it.
That's right, yeah. There's some nice ones in those daily bundles. Good call, Taco. Sometimes you can kind of get that RNG luck in your favor, right, and really nab some exclusive ones. No, you have rough luck with it?
I have a little bit of rough time when it comes to the lucky aspect.
I've been able to get some of those obscure ones that I didn't grab back in like 2015. It's been pretty nice, but that is going to do it here for us for the SML for EU. Remember, it's going to pick up again tomorrow at North America at the same time, but we still have SPL action coming for you. It's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern here, our time, so about an hour or so. Just check right back with us, and we'll make sure we got it there for the SPL.